Story 1.
I spent 3 years trying to figure out why my wife couldn't just be honest with me. Turns out she was being perfectly honest, just not with me. She was being honest with my best friend in text messages where they planned exactly how to divorce me, split my assets, and marry each other once the check cleared. I blame myself for every single lie she told, and she let me. So here's the situation. My wife quit her job and let me believe it was temporary. She started disappearing without explanation, lying about where she'd been, and picking fights over things that made no sense. What I didn't know was that every argument, every lie, every tearful deflection was part of a script she and my best friend had been writing together for months. I'm 35 male, and I was the kind of husband who would rearrange his entire life to make his wife comfortable. My wife is Caroline, 32. My best friend since childhood is Simon, 35. And the woman who accidentally blew the whole thing wide open is Sarah, Caroline's friend, who had no idea her name was being used as an alibi. Let me take you back to the beginning, because the beginning is where I lost myself. I grew up watching my father build something from nothing. He started a small logistics company in his 20s, ran it out of a rented office with one phone line, and turned it into a regional operation that employed over 200 people. He never talked about money. He talked about discipline, about showing up, about earning the right to sleep well at night. When I graduated college, I didn't walk into a corner office. He made me start in the warehouse. I loaded trucks for 8 months before he let me touch a spreadsheet. Simon's father was my dad's oldest friend. They'd grown up together, started their careers around the same time. But where my father built slowly and carefully, Simon's father inherited a mid-sized manufacturing business and coasted. Simon grew up with the same access I did, but none of the structure. We were inseparable as kids. Same schools, same summers, same circles. I loved him like a brother. I need you to understand that, because everything that comes later sits on top of that love like a stone on a grave. I met Caroline at a friend's wedding when I was 29. She was smart, warm, disarmingly funny. She worked in marketing for a mid-tier firm and seemed genuinely passionate about it. We dated for 2 years, married at 31. The first year was everything I'd hoped marriage would be. She was considerate, attentive. She'd leave notes in my lunch bag, she'd ask about my day, and actually listen. The shift happened around month 14. I was in the kitchen one evening grabbing water, and Caroline was on the phone with her mother in the living room. She didn't know I was within earshot. I heard her say clear as glass, "No, Mom, I'm done with that job. I'm not going back." Why would I? He makes more than enough. She'd told me she was taking a break. A few months to reset, maybe explore freelancing. I'd supported it completely. I'd told her to take all the time she needed. I stood in the kitchen with a glass in my hand and felt something cold settle in my chest. Not anger. Something worse. Confusion that had weight to it. I didn't confront her. I told myself the lie I'd keep telling myself for the next 2 years' time. She doesn't feel safe enough to be honest with me. I need to do better. Asterisk. I became obsessed with being the perfect safe space. I stopped asking about her job search. I increased her access to our accounts. I made sure she never had to ask for anything. I thought if I just removed every possible source of pressure, she'd eventually open up. She never did. She just got more comfortable. Then came the conversation about children. We were sitting on the couch a lazy Sunday, and I brought it up gently. I said I'd been thinking about it, that I felt ready, that I wanted to know where her head was. Caroline's face changed like someone had flipped a switch behind her eyes. "Why are you pressuring me?" "I'm not pressuring you. I'm asking. Your time's always times doing this. You bring up these huge things like they're casual and then expect me to just..." "Caroline, I literally I don't want to talk about this. I can't believe you'd ambush me like this." She left the room. I sat there staring at the muted television, my hands open on my knees, trying to understand what had just happened. It was like watching someone detonate a building to avoid a conversation about the weather. The reaction was so wildly disproportionate that it left me dizzy. I replayed the exchange a dozen times. I couldn't find the grenade I'd supposedly thrown. That night, she acted like nothing happened. I let her. 3 weeks later, she disappeared. I came home from work at 6. The house was empty. No note. No text. I called her at 6:30. No answer. Called again at 7. Nothing. By 8, my hands were shaking. By 9, I was pacing the hallway, rehearsing what I'd say to the police. She walked in at 9:45 like she was returning from a coffee run. Were times you. Relax. I was at Sarah's. You were gone for hours. You didn't answer your phone. You didn't. My battery died. And honestly, I was still upset with you, so I didn't feel like talking. Caroline said that she had gone to visit her friend Sarah, as Sarah had invited her over. She didn't tell me because she was mad at me. She was unable to pick up my calls because her battery died. After that, we talked a little more, and then I went to sleep. Caroline fell asleep almost immediately, but I could not. The events of the day kept revolving in my head. I could not understand what the uncomfortable feeling was, but I was not feeling all right. Something was just totally off. I felt like Caroline was turning into a stranger. She did some things that were completely out of my understanding. It was not how she usually behaved with me. The way she was so casual about being absent and not informing me felt very wrong. It was not the person I married who was so considerate and loving. I lay there in the dark listening to her breathe, and I told myself one more time. Times. She needs space. Be patient. Be better. Asterisk. 2 weeks later, I ran into Sarah at the grocery store. We exchanged pleasantries. I thanked her for having Caroline over that evening, said it was good for her to get out of the house. Sarah's face went blank. What evening? A couple weeks ago. Caroline said she spent the evening at your place. Sarah shook her head slowly. I haven't seen Caroline in months. The grocery store fluorescents buzzed overhead. My cart sat between us with its stupid box of cereal and its stupid bag of apples. Sarah looked uncomfortable. I smiled, said I must have gotten the dates mixed up, and walked away. I sat in my car in the parking lot for 40 minutes without starting the engine. That night, while Caroline showered, I picked up her phone. She'd changed the passcode. She'd never had a passcode before. My hands were steady. My breathing was even. But somewhere behind my ribs, something had already cracked open. I set the phone down exactly where I'd found it, angled the same way, and waited. The next morning, I called Simon. We hadn't talked in a few weeks, which wasn't unusual. I kept it casual. Asked how things were going. Then, almost as an afterthought, I said, "Hey, have you talked to Caroline lately? She's been kind of off." Simon laughed. Easy. Relaxed. Dude, I haven't talked to Caroline in ages. You know that. I knew right then. I just didn't know how deep it went. I didn't sleep that night either. Or the next. I lay beside Caroline in our bed and studied the ceiling like it owed me answers. My body was still. My mind was a crime scene. I did not confront her. I did not raise my voice or change my routine, or let a single muscle in my face betray what was building behind it. I kissed her goodbye each morning. I asked about her day each evening. I was the same man I'd always been, except now I was someone else entirely, someone operating on a frequency she couldn't hear. I bought a GPS tracker on a Tuesday. Small magnetic the size of a matchbox. I attached it to the underside of her car at 4 in the morning while she slept. Then I went back inside, made coffee, and left for work. The first ping came at 1:47 a.m. She was at Simon's apartment. The second ping came at 2:15 p.m. Still at Simon's apartment. She came home at 5, kissed my cheek, and said she'd spent the day running errands and getting her nails done. I looked at her nails. They were the same as yesterday. They look great, I said. That weekend, while Caroline was in the shower, she'd started taking longer showers. I'd noticed the way you notice a door that used to be open slowly closing. I found her laptop open on the kitchen counter. Her messages were synced. I don't know if she'd forgotten or if she'd simply stopped caring enough to be careful. Arrogance does that. It makes you sloppy. I sat down at the counter and read. The text between Caroline and Simon went back 7 months. 7 months. Nearly half the time I'd spent wondering what I was doing wrong, they'd been building something on top of my blindness. The messages were organized, almost clinical. Caroline had mapped out a divorce timeline. She referenced specific accounts, specific assets. She knew the value of the house. She knew about the investment portfolio my father had helped me build. She knew about the business shares. Simon's messages were worse. Not because they were crueler, but because they were times familiar, asterisk. He wrote to her the way he used to talk to me, casual, conspiratorial, like they were in on the same joke. And I suppose they were. I was the joke. One exchange stopped me cold. Caroline times, he asked about kids. Again. Asterisk. Simon times Jesus. Stall him. Last thing we need is a custody complication. Asterisk. Caroline times handled it. Made him feel like an asshole for asking. Asterisk. Simon times, that's my girl. Asterisk. I read that 3 times. My vision didn't blur. My hands didn't shake. Something had gone very quiet inside me, the way a house goes quiet right before a storm takes the roof off. They had a plan. Caroline would file for divorce, claim emotional neglect, she'd been documenting fabricated grievances for months, take her share of the assets, and marry Simon within the year. Simon's business was hemorrhaging money. He needed the payout. She needed someone who'd let her live exactly the way she wanted. They'd found each other in the most efficient way possible through me. I closed the laptop. I wiped the browser history of my search. I positioned it exactly as she'd left it, angled the same way. The way I'd learned to replace things in this house carefully, precisely, like a man defusing a bomb he didn't build. Monday morning, I called a divorce attorney. Not the one Caroline would expect. Not anyone in our social circle. A sharp, quiet woman 2 towns over whose name I'd found through my father's network. I told her everything. I showed her screenshots I'd taken with a burner phone. She looked at me across her desk and said, "You're ahead of this. Let's keep it that way." I moved money. Legally carefully on counsel's advice. I documented every asset Caroline had claimed knowledge of in her texts. I built a case not with anger, but with architecture. The same kind my father taught me when he handed me my first spreadsheet and said times. The numbers don't lie, son. People do. Asterisk. 2 weeks later, on a Wednesday morning, I packed a single bag while Caroline was at Simon's apartment. The tracker confirmed it, 10:23 a.m. Like clockwork, and I left our house. I drove to my parents' home. My mother opened the door, looked at my face, and didn't ask a single question. She just stepped aside. Caroline came home that evening to an empty house and a manila envelope on the kitchen counter. Divorce papers. Filed that morning. Her first text arrived at 6:47 p.m. Then another. Then another. By midnight, she'd sent 31 messages. I read none of them. I turned my phone off, set it on the nightstand in my childhood bedroom, and stared at a ceiling I actually recognized. The proceedings were swift. My attorney was surgical. Caroline's fabricated grievances collapsed under the weight of her own text messages. The court saw everything, the timeline, the asset mapping, the conspiracy. Simon was named His texts were entered into evidence. Caroline's attorney tried to negotiate. Mine didn't blink. She got almost nothing. And then the thing I hadn't predicted happened. Simon disappeared. Not physically worse. He simply stopped answering Caroline's calls. Because Simon never wanted Caroline. Simon wanted my money filtered through Caroline. Without the payout, she was just a woman who'd burned her life down for a man who saw her as a transaction. He ghosted her the way I had, except I had a reason. He just had a preference. Simon's business folded within the year. His father called my father once, the conversation brief and heavy. Two old friends on opposite sides of something their sons had built between them, like a wall. My father never told me what was said. I never asked. I did not recover quickly. I want to be honest about that. There were months where I couldn't eat a full meal. Months where I sat in my car in parking lots the way I had that day outside the grocery store, except now I knew exactly what the uncomfortable feeling was. It was grief. Not for Caroline. For the man I'd been before, I learned what the people closest to me were capable of. My mother pushed me toward therapy. I resisted with the stubbornness of a man who thought surviving was the same as healing. She pushed harder. I went. It took a long time. Longer than I'll detail here. But I am writing this now, and I want you to notice something. I'm writing it effortlessly. Not because the story is easy, because I rebuilt the person telling it. Brick by brick, from a foundation that was always mine, the one my father laid when he made a kid load trucks before he'd let him touch a spreadsheet. The ceiling I stare at now is one I chose. The silence in my house is one I earned. And the man lying beneath it finally sleeps.
Story 2.
I took a handmade gift off my brother-in-law's desk while he was at lunch and left a note telling him exactly why. My wife Lena spent over 60 hours crocheting a bridal shawl for her older brother George's wedding. A family tradition. Their mother Vivian guilt-tripped her into continuing, despite the fact that George made her childhood a living nightmare. The moment that shawl was in their hands, his fiancée Diane called Lena to uninvite her from the wedding. Venue capacity, apparently. Funny how there was still a seat for me, though. So here's the cast. I'm a guy in my early 30s. My wife is Lena, her older brother is George, and his now wife is Diane. Their mother is Vivian. Then there's Lena's other brother Michael and his wife Sarah, who are basically the only decent people in this family. Let me start from the beginning because this goes way deeper than a shawl. Lena doesn't talk about her childhood the way most people do. There are no funny anecdotes about sibling rivalries or eye-rolling stories about family holidays. When she talks about growing up, which is rare, she speaks in small, careful sentences like someone walking through a room full of broken glass and bare feet. I learned the full picture in pieces over the years. George is 4 years older than Michael, and Michael is 2 years older than Lena. From the time Lena could walk, George decided she was beneath him, not in the way older brothers sometimes dismiss younger sisters. In the deliberate, systematic way a person dismantles someone they view as competition for resources they believe belong exclusively to them. He broke her things, told her she was adopted, locked her in closets during family gatherings, and told Vivian she'd gone to bed on her own. When George graduated high school, Lena wasn't brought to the ceremony. She was 9 years old, left home with a babysitter while the rest of the family celebrated. At Christmas, she was routinely sent to her room when George complained that she was annoying him. Vivian complied every single time. Every single time. Michael told me once, his voice tight with something between guilt and rage, that he used to sneak food up to Lena's room on Christmas evening because Vivian wouldn't call her down for dinner if George was in a mood. He was 11 smuggling turkey and potatoes up the stairs to his little sister like she was a prisoner in her own house. And Vivian. Vivian is the kind of mother who will tell you she loves all her children equally while standing on one child's neck to give the other a boost. George was the golden boy. Michael was tolerable. Lena was the afterthought, useful when needed, invisible when not. So when Vivian called Lena 3 months before George's wedding and told her the family tradition required a hand-crocheted bridal shawl for Diane, I watched my wife's face do the thing it always does. The slight freeze. The micro-flinch around her eyes. And then the smile. The automatic survival-trained smile that says, "Times of course, Mom, I'd love to." Asterisk. I waited until she hung up before I said anything. You don't have to do this. It's tradition. Mom made one for Sarah. Her mom made one for her, Lena. It's George's wedding. She was already pulling up yarn suppliers on her phone. I won't have to see him. You can drop it off at work. That was the compromise. George and I work at the same company, different teams now, but at the time, we were on the same one. I'd have moved when George was first put on my team, but Lena encouraged me not to, as she didn't want me to rock the boat with her family. So I'd been white-knuckling through shared meetings and break room encounters with a man I genuinely despised for the better part of a year. The plan was simple. I'd leave the shawl on his desk, say something brief, walk away. Lena would never have to be in the same room as him. She worked on that shawl every night for 2 months. I'd come downstairs at midnight and find her on the couch, fingers moving through ivory lace thread, some tutorial playing on her laptop. She pricked her fingers raw. She frogged entire sections and started over because a single stitch was off. 63 hours. I know because she tracked it, not out of resentment, but because she tracks all her projects. She's meticulous like that. She cares about things with her whole body, even when the people she's caring for don't deserve a single stitch. The morning I delivered it, I set the wrap box on George's desk while he was in a meeting. I ran into him in the hallway on my way back. Lena finished the shawl, I said. It's on your desk. She put a lot of work into it. We're looking forward to the wedding. George nodded like I told him the printer was fixed. Cool. Thanks. That was it. Cool. Thanks. 63 hours of his sister's hands, and he gave it less acknowledgement than a coffee refill. 4 hours later, Lena called me at work. Her voice had that particular flatness I've learned to dread, the one that means she's holding herself together with both hands. Diane just called. My stomach dropped. What did she say? They're over capacity at the venue. They need to cut the guest list. So, I'm uninvited. I didn't speak for a long time. I could hear her breathing. But you're still invited, she added quietly. Diane made sure to mention that. I stared across the open plan office at George's desk. He wasn't there. But the box was gone. The shawl was already in their possession. They had waited with surgical, calculated patience until the gift was physically extracted before making the call. Not to me, to Lena. Directly to the woman they knew wouldn't fight back. They waited, I said, mostly to myself. It's fine, it's just a wedding. It wasn't fine. It was never fine. It was the Christmas dinner she ate alone in her bedroom. It was the graduation she wasn't brought to. It was 30 years of a family teaching her that her only value was what she could produce for them, and the moment the production was complete, she could be discarded. I stood up from my desk. I walked across the floor to George's section. His chair was empty. His jacket was gone, long lunch probably. And there, draped across the back of his chair like it meant nothing, was the shawl. Unwrapped, not folded, just tossed there ivory lace pooling on a cheap office chair. I picked it up. I folded it carefully the way Lena would have. Then I pulled a sticky note from George's desk, uncapped a pen, and started writing. Asterisk. Since Lena is no longer invited the shawl, and I won't be attending either. My name, asterisk. I pressed the sticky note to the center of his monitor, tucked the folded shawl under my arm, and walked back to my desk. My hands were steady. My pulse was not. I didn't call Lena right away. I sat with the shawl in my lap for 10 minutes, running my thumb over the stitches she'd spent 63 hours perfecting, and I thought about an 11-year-old boy smuggling turkey up a staircase to his little sister on Christmas night. I thought about a 9-year-old girl sitting in a quiet house while her family cheered for the brother who locked her in closets. Then the group chat detonated. Vivian fired first times. That shawl was a gift. You don't take back gifts? This is beyond petty. Asterisk. George, 15 minutes later. Times. Tell your husband to stay in his lane. This is family business. Asterisk. Diane times. We tried to handle this gracefully. Venue limitations are real. This is incredibly childish. Asterisk. My phone buzzed 11 times in 20 minutes. I read every message. Then I typed one of my own. Asterisk. This is Lena's husband. Lena didn't take the shawl back. I did. She doesn't know yet. When she finds out, she'll probably want me to return it because that's who she is, someone who gives and gives even when people take without thanking her. I'm not returning it. The shawl took 63 hours. You waited until it was in your hands to uninvite the woman who made it. That wasn't a capacity issue. That was a transaction. I'd do it again. Asterisk. I put my phone face down on my desk. When I got home, Lena was sitting on the couch with her knees pulled up. She'd seen the group chat. You took it back, she said? Not a question. You shouldn't have done that. Probably not. They're going to... I don't care what they're going to do. She pressed her forehead into her knees. I should just make another one. I can finish it in time if I... Lena. No. It's easier if I just... It's easier for times them, asterisk. It has always been easier for them. She went quiet. I sat down next to her but didn't touch her. She needed space to think without someone else's hands telling her what to feel. My phone rang. "Michael?" "I saw the group chat," he said. His voice had that tight quality I'd heard before, the sound of a man who'd spent his childhood watching something terrible happen and never had enough power to stop it. The venue excuse is garbage. I called the venue coordinator last week to confirm dietary requirements. They're at 68 of 90 capacity. George has been under for weeks. I closed my eyes. Say that again? 68 of 90. They had room. They always had room. I related to Lena. She didn't cry. She did something worse. She nodded slowly, like a person confirming something they'd always known but had never been allowed to say out loud. "It was never about the venue," she whispered. "No," I said. "It was never about the venue." The conversation that followed lasted 3 hours. I didn't push. I didn't argue. I asked questions and I listened. At the end of it, Lena picked up her phone, left the family group chat, and deleted it. Then she blocked George's number. Then Diane's. She held her thumb over Vivian's contact for a long time. "She's my mother," she said. "She is." Lena blocked the number. The next morning, I went to my manager. I told him the situation, not all of it, but enough. I said I'd taken the shawl because George could make things difficult for me, but that he would have done exactly the same thing because George is a nightmare. I told him that I'd like to move to another team because it wasn't good for Lena to have to be around him. He told me to leave it with him and he would see what he could do. I heard back on Monday that I will be getting moved to another team at the end of the week. This other team is desperate for someone, so when my manager reached out to other managers to see if anyone had an internal vacancy, the manager bit his arm off. The day of the wedding, Michael called Lena and asked what her plans had been for the day. Michael and Sarah drove 2 hours to spend the afternoon with us. Sarah brought wine. Michael brought takeout from the Thai place Lena loves. We ate on our back porch. Sarah took a photo of the four of us, nothing posed, just mid-laugh, Lena leaning into my shoulder with noodles on her fork. Michael posted it that evening. No caption. No explanation needed. George, according to mutual friends, had a meltdown during his own reception when someone asked where his sister was. Apparently, Diane had to pull him outside. I'd like to say I felt nothing, but that would be a lie. I felt satisfied. Quietly, deeply satisfied. The shawl sat in our closet for 2 weeks. Then one Saturday morning, I came downstairs and found Lena at the kitchen table with a basin of indigo dye and the ivory lace submerged in it. "What are you doing?" "Making it mine." She lifted it out, dripping deep blue, and held it up to the morning light. 63 hours of her hands transformed. No longer a gift for someone who never deserved it. Something entirely hers. She draped it over her shoulders, still damp, and looked at me. "How does it look? Like it was always supposed to be yours?" She smiled. Not the automatic survival smile. A real one. Small and new and hard won, like the first green thing pushing through concrete.
Story 3.
My best man had a playpen set up in his bedroom for my infant son, and I was the last person to find out why. My fiancée spent months sneaking into his house, exchanging I love yous on Snapchat, and building a whole second life behind my back, and when I finally caught her, she didn't apologize. She filed a restraining order to try to take my son away from me, then showed up to our baby's doctor appointment and sat in my lap like nothing happened. I'm 23. My ex-fiancée is Megan, she's 21. My former best friend is Tyler, 23, the guy I literally asked to be my best man. And then there's Connor, Tyler's adopted brother, who ended up being the only one with enough conscience to send me the proof that blew everything wide open. Megan and I had been together since we were teenagers. High school sweethearts, the whole small-town fairy tale. By the time our son was born, I thought we were locked and engaged, raising a baby, planning a wedding for August 19th. Tyler had been my closest friend since middle school. When I asked him to be my best man, it felt like the most natural decision I'd ever made. His family had practically adopted us. His mom babysat our son. His house was the place we all gathered on weekends around bonfires, passing beers, feeling like everything was exactly where it was supposed to be. The first crack didn't look like a crack. It looked like a fight about nothing. It started in early summer, Megan spending more and more time at Tyler's place. Not with me, without me. She'd take the baby over there in the afternoon and not come back until late. I'd get home from work and the apartment would be dark and empty. When I brought it up, she'd roll her eyes. His mom watches the baby so I can breathe for 5 minutes. You want me to lose my mind? I didn't push it. Tyler's family was generous. They had space, they had food, they loved our son. I told myself I was being paranoid. Jealousy was ugly. I wasn't going to be that guy. Then came the night of the bonfire. We were all out at a buddy's place mid-June, one of those nights where the smoke smells like summer and everyone's laughing too loud. I had a 4 a.m. shift the next morning, so around midnight I told Megan I was heading home. She wanted to stay. Fine. I kissed her, kissed the baby, drove back to our apartment, set my alarm, and crashed. I woke up at 3:15 a.m. to silence. The bed was empty. Cold. She hadn't come home. I called her. Straight to voicemail. Called again. Voicemail. My chest started doing that thing where it tightens one rib at a time. I called Tyler. He picked up on the fourth ring, groggy. Yeah. Is Megan there? Pause. Yeah, man. She crashed here. She had the baby, didn't want to drive. I was at his house in 12 minutes. When I walked into Tyler's bedroom, Megan was passed out on his bed. Not the couch, not a guest room, his bed. And there in the corner was a playpen. Set up, ready. Like it lived there. My son was asleep in it, pacifier bobbing gently with each breath. Tyler was on the couch in the living room. He sat up when I came in, rubbing his eyes like this was all perfectly normal. She didn't want to wake the baby, he said. I looked at him. Looked at the playpen. Looked at my fiancé in his sheets. Why is there a playpen in your bedroom, Tyler? My mom put it there. For when she babysits. I woke Megan up. She blinked at me, disoriented, then annoyed. What are you doing here? You're in his bed, Megan. I fell asleep. The fire went late. I didn't want to drive with the baby. You could have called me. My phone died. It rang before going to voicemail. That means it was on. Her face shifted. Okay, it didn't die, but I didn't see your calls. I was asleep. 3 stories in 60 seconds. Each one replacing the last without acknowledgement, like the previous version had never existed. I stood there holding my son's diaper bag, watching her rearrange reality in real time, and something in my gut went cold. But I didn't have the proof. I didn't have anything except a feeling and a playpen that shouldn't have been there. So I swallowed it. July 5th broke me open. We've been fighting for weeks straight about Tyler, about her being gone, about the wedding plans she kept pushing off. That night she left the apartment twice, slamming the door both times, and both times I sat on the kitchen floor with my back against the cabinets, wondering if I was the problem. After she came back the second time, I did something I'm almost embarrassed to admit. I wrote her a letter. Handwritten. Pages. Everything I felt, how much I loved her, how scared I was of losing our family, how I wanted to fix whatever was breaking between us. I left it on her pillow. She read it. She cried. We talked for an hour, voices low, faces closed. She said she was sorry. She said she loved me. We fell asleep, spooning her back, pressed against my chest, my arm around her waist, and for one night I believed we'd survive. Then her phone lit up on the nightstand. I wasn't asleep yet. The screen glowed in the dark. Snapchat notification. Tyler's Bitmoji. I told myself not to look. I told myself for about 4 seconds. I picked up the phone. I opened the app originally, intending to send Tyler a sarcastic message, something like, "Times thanks for finally texting back buddy times," because he'd been dodging me for weeks. But the message thread was already open, and I read everything. Coordinated visits behind my back. Fabricated alibis. Plans for her to come over when I was at work. Pet names. Flirtation that made my stomach lurch. And then clear as a blade. Asterisk, I love you. Asterisk. Asterisk, I love you too. Asterisk. My hands were shaking so hard, the phone nearly slipped. Megan was still curled against me, breathing slow, and even her hair smelling like the same shampoo she'd used since high school. I could feel her heartbeat through her back. I set the phone down. I stared at the ceiling until my alarm went off. When I confronted her the next morning, she didn't deny it. She didn't confirm it either. She went straight to offense. You went through my phone. That's a violation of my privacy. You're telling Tyler you love him. You had no right. Are you sleeping with him? I'm not doing this. For 15 days, she refused to cut Tyler off. 15 days of circular arguments that went nowhere, of her sleeping beside me while texting him, of me begging for honesty from someone who had forgotten what the word meant. On July 21st, I packed a bag and walked out. And that's when Megan stopped pretending and started trying to destroy me. Within 48 hours of me leaving, Megan filed for a full stay-away order of protection against me and our son. Let that land for a second. Not a custody petition, not a request for space. A stay-away order, the kind reserved for people who pose a genuine threat. She wanted a judge to legally prohibit me from being near my own child, the same child she'd been parking in a playpen in another man's bedroom while I worked overnight shifts to keep formula in the cabinet. I found out through a phone call from my mother, who found out from the courthouse. I was sitting in my truck in a gas station parking lot when she told me, and I remember gripping the steering wheel so hard my knuckles went white and stayed that way for minutes after I let go. The indentations from the leather stayed pressed into my palms like branding. She had no grounds. No evidence of abuse, no police reports, no witnesses to anything, because there was nothing to witness. But she filed it anyway, banking on the system's default sympathy, banking on the assumption that a young mother's word would outweigh a young father's presence. And while the petition worked its way through the court, she moved into Tyler's house. Officially, with our son. My best man was now playing house with my fiancé and my baby in the same bedroom where I'd found that playpen. Then Connor called. Connor was Tyler's adopted brother, quieter, kept to himself, the kind of guy who sat at the edge of bonfires and watched more than he talked. I hadn't spoken to him since everything imploded. When his name popped up on my phone, I almost didn't answer. "I need to send you something," he said. No greeting. His voice was flat disgusted. "Check your messages. Photos. Screenshots. Megan and Tyler together at the house, not hiding, not careful, just times together, asterisk. Her on the couch with her legs across his lap. Him feeding my son in a high chair like it was his kitchen, his family, his life. Timestamps that overlap with the weeks she'd been swearing nothing was happening. "I can't watch this anymore," Connor said. "My own brother. In our parents' house. It's sick." I stared at the photos until my screen dimmed. Then I sent every single one to Megan's parents, to Tyler's parents, to our mutual friends. To anyone who'd spent the last month hearing her version of events that I was controlling, that I was paranoid that she left because she was times scared times of me. The truth detonated across our entire small town in a single evening. Megan's family went silent. Her mother, who I'd watched cry at our engagement party, stopped returning her calls. Her sister unfollowed her on everything. Tyler's parents, the same people who'd opened their home to us, who'd set up that playpen, who'd fed our son mashed bananas on Sunday mornings, asked Megan to find somewhere else to stay. She didn't. Tyler convinced them to let her remain. The house divided against itself. And then came the doctor's appointment. Our son had a follow-up visit routine scheduled months prior. We were both listed as parents. Both had a right to be there. I arrived early, sat in the waiting room with my hands between my knees, mentally rehearsing how to be civil to a woman who was actively trying to get a restraining order against me. Megan walked in 7 minutes late, and the performance began immediately. She sat down next to me. Not across the room. Not one chair apart. Asterisk. Next to me. Asterisk. Close enough that her thigh pressed against mine. I shifted away. She closed the gap. "How's he been sleeping?" she asked bright-eyed, like we were still a couple comparing notes over breakfast. "Fine." "Is he still doing that thing where he rubs his ear when he's tired? He was doing that last." "He's fine, Megan." She put her hand on my knee. I looked down at it like it was a foreign object. This woman had filed paperwork to keep me away from my child, and now her fingers were resting on my jeans like we were in a waiting room for a sonogram, not a pediatrician's office built on the wreckage of everything she'd burned. When they called our son's name, she stood and looped her arm through mine. I pulled away hard enough that the receptionist glanced up. "Don't touch me." Her eyes went wide, hurt, confused, a masterclass in performed innocence. "I'm just trying to be a good mom. We're here for times him, asterisk." In the exam room, she peppered the doctor with questions she already knew the answers to, nodding earnestly, touching our son's hair, narrating every reaction like a documentary about devoted motherhood. She sat so close to me, our shoulders touched. At one point, she leaned over and whispered, "We make a beautiful kid, don't we?" I couldn't speak. My jaw was locked so tight I could hear my own teeth grinding. People in the community later told me times, "It seems to me that she's testing the waters." Be careful, my friend. Asterisk. I couldn't begin to understand why. She was happy as can be. Dating my former best friend had attempted to file an order of protection on me, and we were about to begin a family court battle that was already leaning toward me. What waters were left to test? Someone put it bluntly times, "Mate, you have to realize that nobody can understand crazy." We can try to find reasons for her behavior, but none would be good reasons. For me, it sounds like a crazy, entitled narcissist brat who doesn't care about what you feel. She wants to cheat, she cheats. She wants you gone, so she tries to get the restraining order. She wants to play with the kid, she will. She wants to talk to you, then she will talk to you. Asterisk. That's Megan. Chaos is currency, control is oxygen. The order of protection was denied. The court saw through it. Megan, perhaps sensing the ground shifting, offered joint custody, unprompted a move that reeked of strategy, not generosity. Her own family still wouldn't back her. The case leaned my way and everyone in town knew why. But here's what no one tells you about winning. August 19th came. Our wedding date. I spent it on my mother's porch, drinking a beer I couldn't taste, watching the sun go down over the same town where I'd proposed, where I'd held my son for the first time, where I'd asked my best friend to stand beside me at the altar. That evening, I drove to the grocery store and saw them in the parking lot. Megan, in the passenger seat of Tyler's truck, my son's car seat, visible in the back. The three of them pulling out of a spot, like any other family, on any other Tuesday. I sat in my truck until they were gone. My hands were steady, my chest was not. The wedding never happened. The friendship was ash. The woman I'd loved since I was 16 was living in the house of the man I'd trusted most. And my only victory, the only one that mattered, was this: I left. The truth was no longer hidden. And my son would grow up knowing that his father fought for him, not against the people who betrayed him, but times for him, asterisk. Every swallowed insult, every clenched jaw in a waiting room, every night I chose silence over rage. It was all for him. That's the part they don't put in the fairy tale. Sometimes the best man was never the best man. Sometimes the only way to protect your family is to watch it be stolen and prove day by day that you were the one worth keeping.
Story 4.
My father blew up his marriage, his career, and his reputation chasing a woman 3 years older than me. Then he had the nerve to move her into my penthouse and let her treat me like a tenant in my own home. So here's the situation. My dad lost everything after leaving my mom for a younger woman begged to crash at my place, and I said yes, because I'm an idiot who loves his father. His new wife didn't know I owned the place, started running it like she was the landlord, and when I got sick, she called my fiancé to tell her I was a cheating dog with bad genetics. That was the last straw. I'm 26 male and I own the apartment this whole disaster takes place in. My dad is Richard, 54, formerly brilliant, currently spineless. His wife is Linda, 29, who thought she married a gold mine and got a sinkhole. My mom is Diane, 52, a class act, who warned me this would happen. And my fiancée is Alice, 23, the one person in my life who didn't deserve to get dragged into this mess. Let me take you back to where it started. My parents' divorce was ugly, but not in the screaming in court way. It was ugly because it was quiet. My mom, Diane, found out about Linda the way most wives do, a text notification on an iPad that was still synced. She didn't cry. She didn't throw things. She sat Richard down at the kitchen table, slid the iPad across, and said, "You have 30 days." He was out in 12. What Richard didn't anticipate was the fallout. He'd been a director at a logistics firm for 19 years, and the affair wasn't just an affair. Linda had been a junior consultant on a project his company contracted. When it surfaced, the board didn't deliberate long. Conflict of interest. Breach of conduct. Termination with a severance package that looked generous on paper until you factored in the divorce settlement, the alimony, and the fact that Richard had already been quietly funneling money into a lifestyle designed to keep a 29-year-old impressed. By the time the dust settled, my father, once a man who wore bespoke suits and drove a Lexus, was renting a 2-bedroom in Glendale and burning through savings like kindling. I'd bought my penthouse at 24 with money I'd made in software development. No inheritance. No family fund. I built a platform that got acquired, took the payout, and invested in property. The deed was in my name. The mortgage was paid. It was the one thing in my life I'd earned entirely on my own terms. So when Richard called me voice cracking, asking if he and Linda could stay just until the investor funding comes through, I knew what I should have said. I knew it the way you know you shouldn't touch a hot stove. I said yes anyway. They moved in on a Tuesday. Linda arrived with 3 suitcases, a 5-year-old daughter from a previous relationship, and a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. Richard introduced her like I hadn't already met her at the dinner where my family imploded. She shook my hand and said, "Your father talks about you constantly." He hadn't told her I owned the place. I realized that within the first hour when she turned to Richard in the kitchen and said, "This is a beautiful apartment, babe. You should have moved here sooner." Richard caught my eye over her shoulder. The look he gave me was a plea. Asterisk. Don't. Asterisk. So I didn't. That silence was the first domino. It gave air to her narcissism. For the initial few months, she didn't bother me. She kept to the guest bedroom with Richard, her daughter took the smaller room, and our orbits barely overlapped. Though she had friends and family visiting her every other day, they didn't disturb me. I'd work from my office, eat at odd hours, and spend weekends at Alice's place. It was manageable. Tight, but manageable. But eventually I found Linda crossing her boundaries. She started commenting that I keep my room messy and that I need to clean my laundry often. small things delivered with a tight smile and a tone that made them sound like instructions rather than observations. I mean, who was she to tell me all of this? My mom never entered my room, ever since I grew up. I'm living a life on my own. I ignored her a few times. But when she started nagging, leaving sticky notes on my door, sighing loudly when she passed my room once, actually picking up my jacket from the couch and dropping it outside my bedroom like I was a college. Freshman eye involved Dad? I told him privately to keep Linda in check. He apologized on her behalf and told her to stay away from me. She didn't take it well that I had reported her to Dad, but she didn't do anything. Not immediately. The sticky notes stopped. The sighing stopped. What replaced them was a cold, watchful silence that somehow felt worse. Her daughter, though, that kid had no such restraint. She spilled juice on my work laptop, drew on the hallway wall with permanent marker, broke a framed photo of me and Alice that sat on the living room shelf. Each time, Linda would offer a limp, kids will be kids, and change the subject. I started keeping my office locked. After a few months, Dad went on an official trip to San Francisco to meet his investors. Linda used the opportunity like a promotion. The first night he was gone, she rearranged the living room furniture. The second night, she had 6 friends over until 1 a.m. music rattling my office wall. The third night, she knocked on my door and told me I needed to take out the trash because the men in this house should handle that. "This is my house," I almost said. The words were right there sitting on my tongue like a grenade. But I thought about Richard, about the look he'd given me that first day. Asterisk. Don't. Asterisk. I took out the trash. When Richard came back, I told him everything. He rubbed his face with both hands, exhaled, and said, "She's pregnant. Just give her 6 more months. The hormones? 6 months. The investor deal is almost through. We'll be out by spring." Spring came. They didn't leave. The investor deal fell through. Linda's belly grew. And I started sleeping at Alice's apartment 4 nights a week, a refugee from my own property. Then I got sick. Really sick. A 104-degree fever that knocked me flat for a week. Alice was away filming content for her channel in Portland. I was alone in the penthouse, delirious, barely eating. And that's when Linda picked up my phone. I found out what she'd done 3 days later when the fever broke, and I finally checked my messages. Alice hadn't texted in 48 hours. That alone was wrong. Alice texted me good morning pictures of her hotel coffee. She sent me blurry sunset photos with captions like, "Wish you were vertical." Silence from Alice wasn't silence, it was a scream. I called her. She picked up on the 4th ring, which meant she debated not picking up at all. "Hey," I said. My voice was still wrecked from the fever. "Hey." Flat. "Careful." The voice of someone holding a door half closed. "Everything okay? I was pretty out of it this week." I talked to Linda. My stomach dropped before my brain caught up. "She called me from your phone," Alice continued. "Said she wanted to check in since you were sick. Then she just kept talking." I sat on the edge of my bed, still dizzy, and listened as Alice laid it out. Linda had told her I'd been bringing women to the penthouse while Alice was away. That I had Richard's blood, her exact words, and that cheating was genetic in this family. She told Alice she'd seen texts, heard phone calls, watched me sneak someone out one morning. She'd cried. Actually cried. Told Alice she felt terrible being the one to say it, but woman to woman, she couldn't stay silent. "I don't believe her," Alice said. But the way she said it slowly, like she was still assembling the sentence, told me she was trying not to believe her. There's a difference. Alice. I was running a 104-degree fever. I could barely walk to the bathroom. I know that logically. but she was so specific and she was crying and her voice cracked. Why does she even have your phone? I couldn't answer that. I didn't know. I'd been unconscious half the week sweating through sheets. And Linda had apparently gone through my phone, found Alice's contact, and detonated a grenade into the one relationship I'd protected from all of this. Alice said she needed space. Not a breakup. Space. The word landed like a brick wrapped in silk. I hung up and sat there for a long time. The penthouse was quiet. I could hear Linda's daughter watching cartoons in the living room. I could hear Linda herself on a phone call in the guest room laughing about something. Laughing. Something shifted in me. Not rage, something colder. A clarity that felt like ice water replacing blood. I got dressed. I walked to the guest room and opened the door without knocking. Linda looked up from her phone, startled, one hand on her pregnant belly like a shield. Get out. Excuse me. Pack your things. You're leaving today. She laughed. Actually laughed the same laugh I'd just heard through the wall. You can't kick me out of your father's apartment. This isn't my father's apartment. The laugh died. Not slowly, it just stopped like someone had cut the audio. The deed is in my name, I said. The mortgage is paid off. By me. Your husband, my father, is broke. He lost his directorship because of you. The investor deal doesn't exist anymore. There is no spring move out because there's nowhere for him to move you to. You've been living in my house, eating my food, running up my electricity bill, and you just called my fiance to tell her I'm a cheater. Linda's face went through 3 expressions in about 2 seconds. Confusion, calculation, then something raw and cornered. Richard told me. Richard lied to you. The same way he lied to my mother. The same way he's been lying to everyone for 2 years because he's too much of a coward to sit in the discomfort of what he's done. I called Richard. He picked up on the first ring, which told me he already knew something was wrong. Maybe Linda had texted him. Maybe he just felt it the way you feel a building shift before it collapses. Tell her, I said. Tell her whose house this is. A long pause. I could hear him breathing. Richard. Tell her. It's his house, Linda. His voice was small. Defeated. The voice of a man who'd been waiting for this moment, the way you wait for test results you already know are bad. It's always been his house. Linda didn't scream. She didn't cry. She stared at the wall behind me like she was recalculating her entire life, and I watched the math fail in real time. I had her bags in the hallway within an hour. Richard came home that evening and packed his own. He stood in the doorway of my office before he left, and I could see him searching for words, an apology, an explanation, something that would stitch this together. I'm sorry, he said. I know. He waited for more. I didn't give it to him. He left. My mom invited Alice to dinner 3 days later. I didn't ask her to. Diane just called Alice directly, something she'd never done before, and said, "Come eat with me. Bring your appetite and your questions." Alice told me about it afterward. Diane didn't trash Linda. Didn't raise her voice. She simply told the truth about the divorce, about Richard's finances, about the house, about who I was before any of this, and who I've been trying to remain throughout. She showed Alice photos from my graduation. Told her about the acquisition. Poured her wine and said, "My son has many flaws. Dishonesty isn't one of them." Alice came home that night and sat next to me on the couch. She was still wearing the ring. She put her head on my shoulder and said, "Your mom is terrifying in the best way." I laughed for the first time in weeks. Richard calls sometimes. I pick up. We talk about nothing, weather sports, surface level things that let us pretend the foundation isn't cracked. I don't hate him. I wish I did. Hate would be simpler than this heavy, tired understanding that my father is a man who will always choose the path of least resistance, even when it runs directly through the people who love him. My mom said something last week that I haven't been able to shake. We were having coffee, and I mentioned that Linda had moved back in with her mother in Pasadena. Diane sipped her latte, looked out the window, and said, "Give it 6 months. She'll find another Richard." She wasn't being cruel. That was the worst part. She was just being accurate.
Story 5.
My fiancé called my mother a whore to her face. His uncle was the one paying her. But somehow, my family carries all the shame. Let me explain. I broke off a 6-year engagement after my fiancé's family discovered my mother used to be a sex worker, and the only reason they found out is because his uncle Tomas was one of her former clients. Instead of holding him accountable, they came after me, called me a gold digger, and told me the only way I could keep my ring was to erase my mother from my life completely. So I gave the ring back. I'm 26. Javi, my now ex-fiancé, is 27. My mother is Rosalina, the woman who starved so I could eat. Tomas is the married man who hired her and then let his whole family destroy her for it. And Senora Delgado is my boss, who turned out to be more family than anyone sharing Javi's last name. Part 1, the dinner. To understand how everything collapsed, you need to understand what my mother built from nothing. Rosalina was 19 when my father left. I was 6. My brother was barely 1. We lived in a 2-room apartment with a stove that worked half the time and a landlord who worked the other half, knocking on our door, asking my mother if she had other ways to cover rent. She did not finish secondary school. She could clean houses, wash clothes, cook for neighbors. She did all of it. And when all of it wasn't enough, she did more. I didn't know what more meant until I was 16. She told me herself, sitting on the edge of my bed, her hands folded so tight her knuckles looked like stones. She said she needed me to hear it from her and not from the street. She said it lasted 4 years. She said she stopped when I was 10, when she got steady work at a textile factory. She said she was sorry. I told her she had nothing to apologize for. I meant it then. I mean it now. By the time I met Javi, I was 20. Working reception at Senora Delgado's logistics firm during the day, finishing my business degree at night. Javi was studying engineering. He was kind, patient, the kind of man who remembered what you said 3 conversations ago and brought it up like it mattered. We dated for 2 years before he proposed. I said yes before he finished the sentence. 6 years. 6 years of Sunday dinners with his parents at birthday parties and holiday toasts, and his mother kissing my cheeks and calling me times Mija asterisk. 6 years of building a life that felt for the first time like something permanent. His family knew I came from poverty. They knew my mother raised us alone. They considered themselves generous for accepting that. What they didn't know, what Javi didn't know, was the specific shape of my mother's survival. I had thought about telling him. Dozens of times. But every time I rehearsed the words, I heard the silence that would follow, and I couldn't do it. That silence terrified me more than any secret. The dinner was Javi's idea. His uncle Tomas had just returned from working in Monterrey for years. "You've never met him properly," Javi said. "He's my favorite uncle. You'll love him." It was a Saturday. I wore the green dress Javi liked. My mother came because Javi's mother had specifically invited her. A gesture of inclusion that, looking back, makes everything worse. We arrived at 7. The house smelled like mole and candle wax. Javi's parents greeted us warmly. His cousins were loud and welcoming. And then Tomas walked in from the kitchen, holding a beer, smiling wide, and my mother's hand seized my wrist so hard I almost dropped the salad bowl. I looked at her face. Every drop of blood had left it. "Mama, we need to go," she whispered. Her voice was flat, mechanical. Right now. Please. What? We just got. Ahora. I didn't understand. I looked at Tomas. He was staring at my mother with an expression I couldn't read. Something between recognition and panic quickly smoothed into a polite smile. He extended his hand. You must be the bride's mother. A pleasure. My mother did not take his hand. She pulled me toward the door and told Javi's mother she was feeling sick. We left within 4 minutes of arriving. In the car, she wouldn't speak. She gripped the steering wheel and drove with her jaw locked, and when we got home, she went straight to her room and closed the door. I heard her crying through the wall for 2 hours. She told me the next morning. Tomas had been a client. Multiple times. She recognized him immediately. My stomach dropped into a place I didn't know existed. Does he know who you are? I asked. He knew, she said quietly. I saw it in his face. Javi came to our apartment that evening. He didn't knock. He pounded. When I opened the door, I barely recognized him. His eyes were swollen. His voice was shaking, not with sadness, but with something hotter, something that had been fed to him by people who had hours to shape his rage before he arrived. Your mother, he said, is the woman who almost destroyed my uncle's marriage? Javi. Did you know? This whole time, did you times no time she was a... Don't. A whore. He said it like he was spitting out glass. Did you know your mother was a whore and you just thought you'd marry into my family and nobody would ever find out? My mother appeared behind me in the hallway. She had heard everything. Javi, please, she said. Her voice was so small. Please don't punish her for what I did. She didn't know about Tomas. You have times no right times to speak to me, he pointed at her. His finger was trembling. You people, you think you can she's probably going to invite men to the wedding just like you did for a living. The sound my mother made was not a word. It was something leaving her body. I stepped between them. Get out. You're a gold digger. Your whole family. Asterisk. Get out of my house. Asterisk. He left. The door slammed so hard the picture frame in the hallway, the one of my mother holding me as a baby, cracked down the middle. 3 days of silence. Then Javi called. His voice was softer. Controlled. He said he'd been carried away by his emotions. He said he loved me. He said his family was willing to move past it. My chest ached. Not gonna lie, I loved him too. 6 years doesn't evaporate because of one terrible night. I wanted to get past all this. There's one condition, he said. I closed my eyes. I already knew. My family doesn't want your mother at the wedding, or the engagement party, or any family events going forward. It's too painful for Tomas and his wife. Too painful for times, Tomas asterisk. She can still be in your life, Javi added quickly, like he was offering a concession. Just not in ours. Not publicly, you understand. I held the phone and stared at the cracked picture frame I still hadn't replaced. My mother in that photo was 20 years old, holding a baby she would starve for, smiling like the future was something she could trust. I need to think, I said. But I wasn't thinking. Something much quieter than thought was already moving through me, settling into my bones, rearranging everything I believed about what love was allowed to cost. I spent 2 days carrying that phone call like a stone in my chest. I went to work. I filed invoices. I answered calls. Senora Delgado asked me twice if I was okay, and twice I smiled and said yes, and twice she looked at me like she knew I was lying, but respected me enough not to push. At home, my mother moved through the apartment like a ghost, trying not to haunt anyone. She cooked dinner I didn't eat. She cleaned surfaces that were already clean. On the second night, she sat across from me at the kitchen table and said the thing I had been dreading more than Javi's ultimatum. Accept his terms. I looked up. If he loves you and you love him, accept it. Her voice was steady, but her hands were not. She was gripping a dishcloth like it was the only thing keeping her upright. I don't need to be at the wedding. I don't need to be at anything. You have worked too hard for this life, times Mija asterisk. Don't throw it away because of me. Mama. I knew this would happen someday. Her eyes were wet, but her jaw was set. I knew my past would come for you, and I told myself that when it did, I would step aside. So I'm stepping aside. She meant it. That was the worst part. She had rehearsed this surrender for years, maybe decades, waiting for the moment her daughter's happiness would require her disappearance. She was offering to erase herself like it was a gift. I reached across the table and took her hands. The dishcloth fell between us. You starved so I could eat, I said. You worked jobs that broke your body. You did things that broke your times, Spirit asterisk. And you did all of it, so I could be sitting here in this apartment with a degree, with a future. And now you're telling me the price of that future is pretending you don't exist. She didn't answer. Her chin trembled. No, I said. No. I called Javi the next morning. Asked him to meet me at the park near his apartment, the one where he'd proposed under the jacaranda tree that dropped purple petals on us like the world was celebrating. He arrived looking hopeful. He'd shaved. He was wearing the blue shirt I'd bought him for his birthday. He reached for my hand. I gave him the ring instead. He stared at it in his palm like it had materialized from nowhere. What is this? I can't marry someone who needs my mother to disappear. I told you she can still be in your... You called her a whore, Javi. To her face. In her own home. I apologized for that. You apologized. And then told me the condition for your forgiveness is that she becomes invisible. That's not an apology. That's a renovation. You're just rebuilding the same house with nicer paint. He closed his fist around the ring. His jaw worked. I could see him cycling through responses, anger, reason, bargaining, and I realized I was watching him do exactly what he'd done on the phone. Performing love with conditions. Offering a version of us that required amputating the person who made me possible. My uncle's marriage almost ended because of her, he said quietly. Your uncle hired her, Javi. He was married, he sought her out. He paid. And when he got caught, your family blamed the woman who was trying to feed her children, not the man who was cheating on his wife. You know that. You times no times, that's what happened. Something shifted in his face. Not agreement, recognition. The brief involuntary flicker of a man seeing a truth he'd already decided not to accept. So that's it, he said. 6 years. 6 years, I said. And I would have given you 60. But not like this. I walked away under the jacaranda tree. No petals fell. It wasn't the season. The fallout was nuclear. Javi's family told their version first, which meant their version became the truth. Mutual friends called not to ask what happened, but to tell me I was making a huge mistake. People who didn't know the full story questioned whether I had been a sex worker too. The whisper network in our community moved faster than fact. Someone from Javi's extended family posted in a religious Facebook group about women who trap good men, and though they didn't use my name, they didn't need to. Everyone knew. I never thought I would get more support from strangers than from people in my own community. I was expecting hate toward my mother. There was some, but less than I'd braced for. The cruelty came from closer. Friends I'd known for years went silent. My brother, 21 and just starting university, called me panicking because someone had messaged him about it. His voice cracked, and I heard my mother's worst fear playing out in real time, her past, reaching her children like a hand from a grave she thought she'd buried. Senora Delgado called me into her office on a Tuesday. She closed the door. She didn't ask what happened. She already knew, because small towns are small in the worst ways. I have a position opening in the Guadalajara office, she said. Same role. Slight raise. There's an apartment in the building where my sister-in-law rents units. 2 bedrooms. Reasonable. She slid a paper across her desk. If you want it. Senora. You don't owe me an explanation. You don't owe anyone an explanation. She took off her glasses and looked at me with something that wasn't pity. It was fury, quiet, controlled, directed at every person who had made this necessary. You are a good employee and a better woman than most people in this town deserve to know. Take the transfer. I took the transfer. We moved on a Sunday. My mother and I packed the apartment in silence, filling boxes with the artifacts of a life we were leaving behind. My brother helped carry furniture to the truck. When we were done, my mother stood in the empty living room and pressed her palm flat against the wall like she was saying goodbye to the building itself. Hobby called for 2 months. Not angry anymore, confused. I think he genuinely could not understand why the gold digger had walked away from the gold. The calls got shorter. Then they stopped. I heard through a cousin that he was seeing someone his family had introduced him to. I hoped she never had to meet Tomas. Then, 3 weeks into our new life in Guadalajara, the apartment still half unpacked. My mother just starting a job at a bakery. My brother settling into a transferred enrollment. My phone buzzed with a Facebook message from a name I hadn't seen in 20 years. My father. Wanting to reconnect. Saying he'd heard we were going through a tough time and he wanted to be there for us. I stared at the message for a long time. Another man who disappeared when things were hard and resurfaced when the hardest part was over. I closed the app. I went to the kitchen where my mother was teaching herself a new bread recipe from a YouTube video, flour on her nose, humming. Something I hadn't heard her hum in months. I sat down beside her. I didn't mention the message. Some doors stay closed.
Story 6.
My ex-husband has probably told you his version of our story. He's good at telling stories. He likes to say our marriage was like a beautiful song. He talks about the high notes of our early years and the sad, slow parts when things got tough. It's a nice way to put it, I guess. It makes him sound romantic and tragic. But he always leaves out the most important part of any song, the silence. The rest. The space between the notes that lets the music breathe. Our music stopped breathing a long time ago. It probably started after the first move, but it died for good after the second one. We packed up our lives twice in 3 years for his career. The second time, we ended up thousands of miles from anyone we knew, from our families, from our home. He had his new job, a new challenge to pour himself into. The kids had a new school to get used to. What did I have? A new, unfamiliar grocery store and a whole lot of empty hours in a house that didn't feel like mine. Back home, I was a person. I was a musician. I played keyboard in a local band that was pretty decent. We had gigs. I had friends I'd known since high school. I had a life that was mine. In this new town, I was just his wife. I was just the kid's mom. My keyboard sat in a corner of the basement gathering dust. My whole identity got packed away in a box and was never opened again. The stress was huge for both of us. His new job wasn't as stable as we'd hoped, and we were always worried about money. But we handled the stress in completely different ways. I pulled inward. I got quiet. I felt like I was disappearing bit by bit every single day. He did the opposite. He clung to me. He needed me to be his rock, his cheerleader, his everything. He'd come home from work and just follow me around the house, talking about his day, his worries, needing constant reassurance that everything would be okay. I know that sounds like a husband loving his wife, but it wasn't. It was suffocating. It was like I was drowning in a calm, shallow pond, and he was the one holding my head under the water, whispering, "I love you the whole time." He never once asked what was going on with me. When I was quiet, he'd say I was being moody or hard to live with. He saw my depression as a problem with my attitude, not as a desperate scream for help from a woman who didn't recognize herself in the mirror anymore. So I started trying to find that woman again. Small things at first. I started doing my makeup again. Really doing it. Not just a swipe of mascara. I bought a new dress not because we had anywhere to go, but just because it made me feel like an individual, not part of a unit. He didn't understand. He'd ask, "Who are you getting dressed up for?" The answer was so simple: me. I was doing it for me. It was the first selfish thing I'd done in years, and it felt like a tiny act of survival. Then I met someone. It was at my part-time office job, a boring gig I took just to get out of the house. He was new, just like me. We started talking during coffee breaks. We talked about how weird the town was, how much we missed our old lives. He found out I was a musician, and his eyes lit up. He actually asked me about my band, what kind of music we played. He didn't see me as a mom or a wife. He saw me. Just me. My husband would call this the beginning of the affair, the pillow talk he found so suspicious. But it wasn't. It was friendship. It was two lonely people in a new place just talking. It was the first real conversation I felt I'd had in years one that wasn't about bills or the kids' report cards or how stressed my husband was. It was just a connection. Of course, the attraction came later. It grew out of that feeling of being seen. One afternoon, we stayed late to finish a project, and we were the last two in the office. We were laughing about something our boss had said, and the laughter just kind of faded, and we were just looking at each other. He leaned in and kissed me. It wasn't planned. It wasn't some evil plot. It was a moment of total weakness, a single spark of warmth in the cold gray fog I was living in. And it felt incredible. It was wrong. I know it was wrong, but in that 1 second, I wasn't just a wife or a mom. I was a woman. I was desirable. I was alive. And it didn't stop with one kiss. Over the next couple of months, it happened again a few times. Stolen moments in the parking lot after work. It never went further than making out, but it was enough. It was my secret, my one thing that was just for me. The guilt was there, but it was buried under so much other baggage. One night, my husband and I were in bed. He initiated like he usually did. He was trying to connect, trying to get back to that beautiful music he thought we had. But as he touched me, all I could feel was the massive distance between us. I started to cry. Not quiet little tears, but real racking sobs. He stopped, obviously confused and hurt. He asked me what was wrong, if it was him. I couldn't tell him the truth. I couldn't even explain it to myself properly. It wasn't guilt over the other man. It was grief. I was mourning us. I was mourning the woman I used to be. The marriage I was in was already dead, and I was crying at its funeral. I tried to tell him something was wrong with me, that I felt lost and needed some space to figure things out. He heard space and immediately went into problem-solving mode. He suggested therapy, date nights, a vacation. He was trying to fix it to control it, which only made me feel more trapped. He couldn't just listen. We limped along like that for a few more weeks, heading into the holidays. I was a wreck inside, but on the outside, I put on the happy mom and wife mask. I wrapped presents, baked cookies, decorated the tree. I tried to convince myself that maybe we could get through this. That maybe this feeling would just go away. Christmas Eve was tense, but we made it. The kids were buzzing with excitement. We put out milk and cookies for Santa and tucked them into bed. My phone was almost dead, so I plugged it in on my husband's side of the bed and fell into an exhausted sleep, praying that for just one day we could pretend to be a normal, happy family. I woke up on Christmas morning to the sound of the kids laughing downstairs. For a second, everything felt normal. I rolled over and my husband wasn't in bed. I figured he was downstairs with them, starting the day. I smiled, thinking maybe we could pull this off. Maybe we could have one good day. Then I saw him. He was standing in the corner of the room by the dresser, holding my phone. His back was to me, but I could see the tension in his shoulders. My blood ran cold. He turned around slowly, and his face was like a ghost's. It was pale and empty. He just held up the phone and said, "Who is he?" There was no yelling, no screaming. It was so much worse than that. It was quiet and theatrical. In that moment on Christmas morning with our kids waiting for us downstairs, he didn't choose our family. He chose to break into my private world and confirm his worst fears. My first thought wasn't even about the affair. It was times you had no right asterisk. What followed was a blur of accusations and demands. He collapsed onto the floor, literally holding his head in his hands like he was in a movie. He kept saying our life was a lie, that I had destroyed everything. It didn't feel like real heartbreak. It felt like a performance designed to make me feel as small and as horrible as possible. He wanted me to grovel. He wanted me to beg for forgiveness. But all I felt was numb and trapped. He demanded to know everything, every detail, every word we ever said. It wasn't about understanding or healing. It was about gathering ammunition. It was about control. The next few weeks were a prison. He worked from home so he could watch me. He'd drive by my office building in the middle of the day for a surprise hug, which was just his way of checking up on me, of seeing if my car was there, of marking his territory. He needed my phone password, my email password. My life was no longer my own. It was a crime scene, and I was the prime suspect under constant surveillance. His need for reassurance, which had once felt suffocating, had turned into a full-blown interrogation that never ended. We tried therapy. It was his idea, another step in his fix-the-problem plan. We sat on a couch in a stranger's office, and he told his story of the perfect marriage destroyed by my betrayal. I just sat there quiet. The therapist was a nice woman. She listened patiently, and then she turned to me and asked a simple question that shattered everything. She said, "Putting all this aside for a moment, if you could wave a magic wand, is this marriage what you really want?" I couldn't answer. A real genuine yes wouldn't come out. I looked at my husband, at this man whose entire world now revolved around my mistake, and I realized I didn't know what I wanted. More than that, I didn't even know who times I times was anymore. How could I promise to fix a marriage when I didn't even recognize the woman who was in it? A week later, I asked him if we could pause the couples sessions so I could go on my own. I told him I needed to figure myself out before I could work on us. He took it as the ultimate betrayal. To him, me wanting to work on myself was just another way of saying I was giving up on him. The whole situation with my coworker was a nightmare. My husband demanded I cut him out of my life completely, instantly. But he was a key person on a major project I was managing. I couldn't just pretend he didn't exist without tanking my career, the one tiny piece of myself I had left. I tried to keep things strictly professional, limiting contact to emails and group meetings. It was awkward and stupid, and I handled it badly. Then came the happy hour. It was a team event I helped organize for a departing colleague. Of course, my coworker was going to be there. I didn't lie about it. I told my husband I had a work event. He found out later who was there, and he exploded. In his mind, it was proof. It was a secret romantic rendezvous that I had planned behind his back. It didn't matter that we were with a dozen other people. It didn't matter that I left early. To him, my betrayal was ongoing, and my every action was just more evidence. That was the last straw for him. A few nights later, he sat me down and gave me his ultimatum. "You end all contact or I'm moving out," he said. "That means you find a new job if you have to. He has to be gone from your life completely. You choose. Him or me." He thought he was giving me a grand final chance to save our marriage. But listening to him, all I heard was the final power play. It wasn't about love or forgiveness. It was about obedience. It was about him winning. And in that moment, I knew I could quit my job, erase this man from my life, and devote every second to making my husband feel secure again. But I would never be trusted. I would never be my own person. I would always be the woman who had to be watched. I would spend the rest of my life paying for my mistake, living in his shadow, making sure the music never got louder than his single suffocating note of need. So I ended. Not for him, but for me. I sent a final professional text to my coworker, explaining I could no longer have any contact and wished him the best. Then I told my husband it was over. Our marriage everything. I realized I could never heal as long as I was with him. The divorce isn't the tragedy he paints it to be. The real tragedy was the two people who got lost along the way. The man I married who used to see me, and the woman I used to be. Our marriage didn't die on Christmas morning. It died slowly over years of silent resentment and lost identity. His discovery of the text wasn't the cause of death. It was just the moment he finally signed the certificate. It was the sad, necessary end to a song that had gone off key a long, long time ago. Now, at least there's silence. And in that silence, I can finally start to hear my own music again.
Story 7.
I know my ex-husband Alex is telling everyone I'm crazy. I'm sure he's having a field day with this, painting me as the jealous ex-wife who can't handle his new happy life. And maybe some of it looks that way from the outside. But nobody knows what I know. Nobody understands that I wasn't being jealous. I was being a mother. It's been 3 years since the divorce. 3 years of being a visitor in my own children's lives. Alex has primary custody of our 2 boys who are 6 and 4. I get them on weekends when I can. He makes it sound like I'm a flaky part-time mom, always canceling for work. He has no idea what it's like to be the one who had to start over from scratch, to claw my way up in a demanding job, just to afford a tiny apartment for my sons to visit. He stayed in our house with our memories and just slotted someone new into my place. Her name is Chloe. She's 26. When Alex told me she was moving in, he said she was a natural with the boys and that she handles 50% of the child care. He said it like it was a good thing. Practical solution. To me, it felt like a knife twisting in my gut. 50%. She gets to be 50% of their mother. She gets the scraped knees on a Tuesday, the bedtime stories on a Wednesday, the pancake breakfasts on a Thursday. I get scheduled weekends and the feeling that I'm slowly being erased from their lives. When I pick them up, they're always talking about her. Chloe took us to the park. Chloe made dinosaur nuggets. I smile and I nod and I tell them how fun that sounds, but inside I feel like I'm crumbling. I love my sons more than anything in this world, and I'm losing them to a stranger. For months I've had this feeling, this deep, cold knot in my stomach, that something wasn't right. It was all too perfect. Alex happy? The boys happy? The new fiancé perfect. It just felt wrong. Like a movie set where if you peeked behind a wall, you'd see it was all just painted cardboard. Last Thursday, that feeling got so much worse. I went to their house to pick them up for my weekend. Alex was on a work call in his home office and just waved me in without even getting up. Chloe was the one who answered the door. She was acting weird, kind of twitchy, and avoiding my eyes. She said she was cleaning the downstairs bathroom and asked if I could use the one upstairs. I just said sure and headed up, but the knot in my stomach tightened. Why was she so nervous? I walked into the master bathroom, our old bathroom, and the silence was deafening. I wasn't planning on snooping, I swear I wasn't. But something took over. It was that feeling, that mother's instinct screaming at me that something important was being kept from me. My hand was shaking as I reached out and opened the medicine cabinet. And there they were. Tucked behind some allergy medicine were 2 orange prescription bottles, both with her name on them. I didn't recognize the names of the medications, but they sounded serious. Clinical. Terrifying. My heart started pounding in my ears. This was it. This was the thing that was wrong. I knew it. Without thinking, I pulled out my phone, my fingers fumbling, and took a quick, blurry picture of each label. I shut the cabinet, flushed the toilet for show, and went back downstairs to get my kids, my mind racing 1,000,000 miles an hour. The whole drive to my apartment, I felt sick. Later that night, after I'd tucked the boys into bed, I finally pulled out my phone and zoomed in on the pictures. I typed the first drug name into Google. My blood went cold. Antipsychotic. I clicked on the link. It was used to treat schizophrenia, bipolar disorder, psychosis. It talked about side effects, about managing violent episodes and delusions. I looked up the second one. It was another similar drug sometimes used for severe treatment-resistant depression. I couldn't breathe. My hands were shaking so hard I dropped my phone on the floor. This woman, this 26-year-old girl, who was 50% of their caregiver, was on heavy-duty psychiatric medication for conditions that could make her unstable, dangerous. And my ex-husband, the man I had trusted with my children's lives, never said a single word. He let her move in, let her be alone with them, let her put them to bed at night, all while keeping this massive critical secret from me. Any trust I had left for him completely evaporated in that moment. My weekend was a write-off. I told Alex I had to cut it short because of a big project at work. It was a lie. The real project was me trying not to completely fall apart. How was I supposed to play at the park and read bedtime stories when all I could picture were worst-case scenarios? I was consumed with a terror so deep it made me nauseous. I had to get them back there, but I couldn't just hand them over without some kind of protection. I felt totally powerless. Before I drove them back, I knew I had to do something. It was clumsy, I know it was, but I was desperate. I sat my 6-year-old down on my bed. Honey, I started trying to keep my voice from shaking. Mommy needs to tell you something very important, and it's our secret. Chloe, she has a sickness in her brain. Sometimes it can make people act different, or a little crazy. I need you to be very careful. If she ever says something or does something that scares you even a little bit, you have to tell me right away. Okay, you promise. He just nodded, his eyes wide. I felt awful, but I also felt like I was giving him the only armor I could. I was arming him with awareness because his father refused to. I dropped them off on Saturday evening, gave Alex the fake work excuse, and fled before I could start screaming at him. I spent all of Sunday just staring at my phone, my stomach in knots. I knew my son. He's not good at keeping secrets from his dad. I was just waiting. Waiting for the fallout. Just after dinner, my phone buzzed on the coffee table. The screen lit up with his name. Alex. I took a deep breath and answered. I didn't even get to say hello. What the hell did you say to our son? Alex's voice was a low growl, the kind he used when he was trying to control a rage. My own anger flared up, hot and immediate. I told him the truth. The truth you've been hiding from me. The truth? You went into my bathroom, you snooped through my fiancé's private medical information, and you terrified our 6-year-old. That's your version of the truth. She's on antipsychotics, Alex. I was yelling now, standing up from my couch and pacing the small living room. Do you have any idea how serious that is? You have a woman on heavy-duty psychiatric drugs watching our children? And you didn't think I had a right to know? He actually laughed. A short, sharp, ugly sound. Oh, I see. So you played Dr. Googled something you don't understand and decided she's a danger. This has nothing to do with you being jealous, right? Nothing to do with you trying to find a way to hurt her. The accusation felt like a slap. Jealous, Alex. This is about my children's safety. What if she has an episode? What if she gets violent? The things those drugs are for. Schizophrenia, psychosis. My God, are you even listening to yourself? I'm listening to you sound completely unhinged, he shot back. She sees a doctor. She's stable. She's an amazing person who loves our sons. And you, in one afternoon, try to poison our child against her because you can't stand that I've moved on. Every word was a twisting knife. He wasn't listening. He wasn't even considering my fear. He was just defending her, protecting her. He had already chosen his new family over the mother of his children. I felt a wave of despair so strong it almost buckled my knees. He was making me out to be the crazy one when her medicine cabinet was literally filled with proof that she was the one with the problem. You are so blinded by her you can't see anything else, I whispered. My voice thick with tears I refused to let fall. No, you're the one who's blind, he said, his voice dropping again, full of disgust. You're so wrapped up in your own bitterness you're willing to hurt our son to get at me. Don't ever do something like that again. Then his tone shifted, becoming cold and practical. And by the way, you took Leo's bag with all his daycare clothes. I need it back tomorrow. Something inside me just broke. The bag of clothes. It was such a small, stupid thing, but in that moment it felt like everything. It felt like him stripping away the last little pieces of my role as their mother. He was already replacing me with her for the day-to-day care, and now he was demanding back the supplies as if I was just an incompetent babysitter who'd forgotten to return the diaper bag. It was another piece of my old life, my old family being packed up and handed over to the new and improved model. You want the clothes, I screamed into the phone, the rage finally boiling over. Fine, I'll burn them. I'll set the whole bag on fire so you and your perfect new girlfriend can go buy him a whole new wardrobe for your perfect new life. There was a dead silence on the other end of the line. Then, with a chilling finality, Alex said, You've lost your mind! He hung up. The click of the disconnected call echoed in the silent apartment. I stood there, phone in my hand, shaking from head to toe. Tears were streaming down my face, now hot and angry. He thought I was crazy. He was siding with a woman he barely knew over me, the mother of his sons. He was gaslighting me, turning my genuine, terrified concern into a jealous tantrum. I couldn't do it anymore. I couldn't listen to his accusations. I couldn't listen to him defend her. My thumb hovered over his contact information. I felt a sick mix of pain and relief as I pressed the button. Block! The silence that followed was different. It wasn't the silence of a disconnected call. It was the silence of a severed connection. A door I had slammed shut myself. I sank onto my couch, curled into a ball, and just sobbed. I felt utterly and completely alone. But as the hours passed and the crying subsided, something else took its place. A cold, hard resolve. He wasn't going to protect them. He was too deep in it, too in love, or too stupid to see the risk right in front of his face. He called my fear jealousy. He called my warning an attack. He didn't see me as a concerned co-parent. He saw me as a problem to be managed. Well, I'm done being managed. I'm their mother. That title doesn't disappear just because he found a younger replacement. My maternal instinct isn't a form of insanity. It's the only thing that's seeing this situation clearly. He might have primary custody, but I have the primary responsibility to protect them from threats he refuses to see. He thinks I've lost my mind. He has no idea how far a mother will go when she believes her children are in danger. He thinks this is over. This is just the beginning.
Story 8.
My husband thinks I don't see the way he looks at me anymore. He's wrong. I see everything. I see the way his eyes skim over me instead of settling. I see the quick, tight smile he gives me when I get dressed. A smile that says, "Good effort," instead of, "You're beautiful." Most of all, I see the way he looks at his sister and then back at me. It's in that split-second comparison that I feel myself disappear. We had our babies around the same time. Our beautiful, perfect daughter arrived in March, and his sister's little boy came in April. I'm 38. This was my miracle baby, the one I'd waited my whole life for. His sister is 21. For her it was an oops, but a happy one, of course, because her life is one long, happy accident. And that's where the problem started. She didn't just bounce back. It's like the baby was never there. A flat stomach, tiny waist, not a single stretch mark. She paraded around in a crop top at the family barbecue 6 weeks postpartum. 6 weeks. I was still wearing adult diapers and wincing every time I sat down. My husband Mark started getting obsessed. He'd scroll through her Instagram showing me pictures. "Look at Chloe, isn't she amazing?" he'd say. And it felt like a knife twisting. Amazing. Yes, she's amazing. It's also amazing what you can achieve when your parents pay for a full-time nanny, a personal chef who specializes in postpartum nutrition, and a trainer who comes to your house 3 times a week. I don't have any of that. I have a baby who won't sleep unless she's on my chest. A C-section scar that still aches and a hunger that feels like a black hole in my stomach from breastfeeding around the clock. The worst part is I gave him the ammunition he's using against me now. One night I broke down. I was exhausted hormonal, and I just spent 10 minutes trying to zip up a pair of my old jeans and failing. I was looking at a picture Chloe had posted, a selfie in a bikini, and the comments were all fire emojis and people saying, I wish I looked like you. I was crying, and I whispered to Mark, I'd do anything to look like her. I just want to feel like myself again. I wanted him to hold me. I wanted him to say, you're beautiful, you just had a baby. Be kind to yourself. I wanted him to see times me, times his wife, the mother of his child who was hurting. Instead, his eyes lit up. He saw a problem to be solved. And apparently, I was the problem. He went into what I call his fix-it mode. The next day he called Chloe. I heard him on the phone taking notes. So no carbs at all, okay. And processed foods, got it. Lots of vegetables. He came into the living room looking like he'd discovered the cure for cancer. I've got the plan, he announced proudly. We're going to do this. I'm going to help you. His help was a new kind of hell. He started watching everything I ate. If I reached for a cracker, he'd say, is that on Chloe's plan? He'd make these huge, disgusting vegetable smoothies for breakfast that I had to choke down. He threw out the granola bars I kept by the bed for middle-of-the-night feeding sessions because they had too much sugar. My own home started to feel like a fat camp run by a drill sergeant who used to love me. I tried to explain to him that I'm breastfeeding, that I'm hungry all the time. I need calories. I need energy. I can't live on steamed kale and grilled chicken. He just waved it off. Chloe's breastfeeding too, and she's not eating junk, he said. I wanted to scream that Chloe also gets 8 hours of uninterrupted sleep and has someone else cook her perfectly balanced, calorie-dense, and nutritious meals. I just get whatever I can grab with one hand while holding a screaming baby. Yesterday was the breaking point. He told me he'd take care of the groceries from now on to remove the temptation. I knew what that meant. Our fridge would become a green and beige prison of health foods I didn't have the time or energy to cook. So while he was at the gym, I took the baby and I went to the store myself. It felt like an act of rebellion. I bought the things that felt like home. A loaf of sourdough bread for toast in the morning, a box of pasta, and a jar of sauce for a 10-minute dinner. I even bought a bag of chocolate-covered pretzels, my one weakness. I wasn't planning on eating the whole bag. I just wanted to know it was there. I wanted one thing in my life that was just for me. One little piece of comfort that wasn't up for debate. I came home and hid the pretzels in the back of the pantry. I left the other groceries on the counter and went to put the baby down for her nap. She actually went down without a fight for once. It felt like a sign. A small victory. I walked back to the kitchen, my mouth already watering for a piece of toast, thick with butter. It was the only thing I'd been looking forward to all day. The first thing I noticed was the smell. A weird, savory, boiling vegetable smell. Mark was standing at the stove, stirring a big pot, his back to me. He was in his workout clothes, sweat still glistening on his neck. He turned around and gave me that bright problem solver smile. Hey, honey. Just making us a healthy soup for dinner? My eyes went to the counter where I'd left the grocery bag. It was gone. All of it. The bread, the pasta, the sauce. A cold dread started to creep up my spine. I walked over to the pantry and opened it. I pushed aside the quinoa and the cans of chickpeas. The back of the shelf was empty. My pretzels were gone too. I stood there for a moment, the pantry door open, just staring at the empty space where my little bit of happiness used to be. I took a slow breath and turned around to face him. He was still smiling, completely oblivious, like a hero waiting for his medal. I held out the spoon, offering her a taste of the soup. "I'm helping you. This is what you wanted, remember? You said you'd do anything to be like Chloe." Her face, which had been pale with confusion, turned a deep, blotchy red. "My food, Mark." "Where is it?" she said again, her voice low and tight like a wire about to snap. "It's gone," I said, trying to keep my tone even and reasonable. "I threw it out. We can't have that stuff in the house if we're serious about this. It's temptation. You were sabotaging yourself the minute I turned my back." That's when the screaming started. It was like a dam breaking. Not just yelling, but this raw, guttural sound that didn't even seem like it could come from her. "I'm breastfeeding!" she shrieked, her hands flying up to her head. "I need to eat. I'm hungry all the time." That was my food. I put the spoon down, my frustration starting to boil over. Logic wasn't working. Chloe is breastfeeding too, and she's not eating bags of pretzels. It's an excuse. "Chloe has a cook!" she screamed back, tears now streaming down her face. "Chloe has a trainer! Chloe has her parents paying for a nanny so she can sleep 8 hours a night. Don't you dare compare me to her." Of course, I was comparing them. How else do you measure success? You take a goal, you look at the person who achieved it, and you replicate the steps. It's simple. It's efficient. "This isn't about her cook or her trainer," I said, raising my voice to be heard over her crying. "This is about simple choices. It's about putting down the bread and picking up a vegetable." She just shook her head, sobbing. "You don't get it. You haven't looked at me, not really, since our daughter was born. You look right through me. I'm just a project to you now. A problem you need to fix." She was twisting everything. This whole thing, this grand gesture of taking control and helping her, was my attempt to find her again. To bring back the woman who didn't sigh at her own reflection. To get back the connection she herself said she felt was fading. I was doing this times for us asterisk. I threw up my hands in defeat. "Fine. I try to help you with the one thing you told me was making you miserable, and I'm the bad guy. I get it." She didn't say another word. She just turned and walked out of the kitchen. A minute later, I heard our bedroom door slam shut. I was left alone in the kitchen. The healthy soup simmering on the stove. A perfect logical solution that nobody wanted. The whole house was silent, except for the gentle bubbling of the pot. The next few days were a special kind of hell. A cold war fought in whispers and averted gazes. The soup sat in the fridge untouched. I'd eat a bowl for lunch, telling myself it was delicious, that it was the taste of discipline. She ate things that were technically healthy, but with a kind of quiet fury. She'd stand at the counter and eat a plain salad with no dressing or a piece of dry chicken, her jaw tight. She wasn't doing it to be healthy. She was doing it to spite me. to show me how miserable my plan was making her. She stopped talking to me about anything other than the baby. Does she need a diaper change? Can you watch her while I shower? Every question was transactional. The warmth was gone. I'd come home from work and the air in our house would be thick and heavy with everything she wasn't saying. One evening I found her in the nursery just holding our daughter and crying silently in the dark. I stood in the doorway wanting to go to her, to hold her, but I didn't know what to say. I'm sorry, I want you to be happy. Felt like the wrong move. I finally broke down and called my sister. I needed a sanity check. I don't get it, Chloe, I said, pacing in the backyard. I did exactly what you told me. I got rid of all the junk food I made healthy meals, and she's acting like I committed a crime. There was a pause on the other end of the line. Mark! You threw her food away like in the trash. Yeah, she bought it right after I'd done the healthy shopping. It was a cry for help. I had to be the strong one. Oh, honey, no, Chloe sighed. And for a second I thought she was going to lecture me. But then she said, you can't just force it. It's a mindset. But you're right about the food. Getting all the processed carbs out of the house was the single most important step for me. It's just, you know how emotional she is. You have to be delicate. Emotional. That was it. That was the word. I wasn't wrong in my plan, just in my delivery. I hadn't accounted for how emotional she would be. Chloe understood. I felt a wave of relief. My logic was sound. I just needed to be more delicate. That night, I tried again. I went into the bedroom where she was folding baby clothes on the bed her back to me. Hey, I said softly. I've been thinking. I get that I was a little aggressive. I'm sorry about that. But my goal was a good one. I just want you to feel good again. I want times to be good again. She didn't turn around. She just kept folding a tiny pink onesie with meticulous, angry precision. Do you know what would make me feel good, Mark? She said, her voice flat. It would be for my husband to think I was beautiful even if I still have a belly. It would be for him to bring me a cookie when I'm up at 3 a.m. with the baby. Not to throw my food in the garbage. It would be for him to hold me and tell me I'm a good mom, not hand me a diet plan based on his 1-year-old sister. She finally turned to look at me, and her eyes were empty. You didn't do this for me. You did this for you. You don't like how I look, and you thought you could fix me. I opened my mouth to argue, to explain that he was wrong, that she had it all backwards. But no words came out. Because in that moment, she didn't look like my wife. She looked like a stranger. A sad, tired stranger who was convinced I was her enemy. And I had no idea how to solve that. I had the blueprint, the plan, the perfect solution. And she just refused to see it. What are you supposed to do when someone you love doesn't want to be fixed?
Story 9.
I'm his wife. I'm the one you all read about, the one who sexted another man with her daughter in the back seat. I'm the monster who kept a diary about it. I know what you think of me, but you don't know what it's like to slowly disappear inside your own life. My life is a cage. It's a comfortable cage, painted in soft, neutral colors, but it's still a cage. And my husband, the man you all feel so sorry for, is the kind, gentle warden. He brings me my meals, makes sure I take my medicine, and locks the door every night to keep me safe. It wasn't always like this. In college, he was different. He was passionate and alive. A little possessive, maybe, but I thought it was romantic. Then came that thing with the texts. A guy from one of my classes, someone I barely knew, sent me some stupid, flirty messages. My husband, my boyfriend back then, found them on my phone. He didn't yell. He never yells. He just got quiet and looked so hurt, so betrayed. I spent days apologizing for something I didn't even do for someone else's words. Looking back, I see it for what it was. It wasn't about me cheating. It was his first attempt to build a fence around me to be the only person I was connected to. The real walls didn't go up until my seizures got bad. My epilepsy isn't the kind you see in movies. It's a constant low-level hum of anxiety in the back of my mind. The big ones are rare, but the small ones, the ones that make me lose time or just stare blankly into space, can happen anytime. I can't drive. I can't be left alone with our daughter for too long. My world shrank and he became my full-time manager. After our daughter was born, the fence became a fortress. He stopped seeing a wife. He saw a patient. Every single thing we did together became a risk assessment. Did you take your meds? You look tired. You should lie down. Don't overdo it. Here, let me carry that. I know he thought he was being a good husband. He times is times a good man, a wonderful father. That's what makes it so much worse. You can't scream at a man who is gently, lovingly suffocating you to death. You just lie there and let the air run out. He complains he became a grayed-out zombie, but he became that person long before I did. He was a man going through the motions of caretaking, not partnership. Sex became a checklist item. Another thing to be careful about. Could it trigger a seizure? Was I too tired? There was no passion, just procedure. I was a walking pre-existing condition he had to manage. And I was so alone. I was invisible in my own home. Then someone saw me. My colleague, let's call him Mark, he actually saw times me asterisk. We started working on a project together. He didn't know about my seizures at first. He just saw a woman who was smart and funny and good at her job. He'd laugh at my stupid jokes. He'd listen when I talked about a book I was reading, not just nod while secretly counting the pills in my weekly organizer. We became friends. Real friends. The kind of friends I hadn't had since before my diagnosis took over my identity. That day at the gas station. It was a breaking point. My husband was in the store with our daughter getting her a snack. I could see them through the window. He was crouched down laughing with her, his face lit up. He was in his perfect dad bubble. I was just the fixture in the passenger seat, the cargo he had to transport from one safe place to another. I felt like a ghost. Then my phone buzzed. It was Mark sending a joke. I wrote back. He wrote back something flirty. And I just leaned into it. It was a jolt of electricity in my grayed out world. It was stupid and so reckless to do it right there. But I was so trapped, so desperate to feel something real, something that was just for me. For a few minutes, I wasn't a patient or a mother. I was just a woman talking to a man who found her desirable. The diary was my only escape. It was the one place on earth I didn't have to pretend. I wrote everything down. My husband thinks my other life was this secret world away from him and our daughter. He's wrong. My other life was the one he managed the life of the sickly, dependent woman in our quiet gray house. The affair, the feelings I had for Mark, that was my times, real times life. It was messy and wrong, but it was mine. I wrote about the one-night stand. I had a desperate and clumsy attempt to feel something physical after our daughter was born, and my husband started treating me like glass. I wrote about Mark, about our conversations, about how it felt to be seen. The work trip was supposed to be a breath of fresh air. A whole week of being a person. I told my husband it was a mandatory conference. It was, but Mark was going too. We shared a hotel room. It wasn't some wild, passionate romance. We talked for hours. We ordered room service and watched bad movies. I could snuggle up against him on the couch without him putting a hand on my forehead to check for a fever or asking if my aura felt weird. He saw me. Just me. But it was complicated. I felt so much guilt, so much confusion. This person saw me, the real me, but he couldn't have all of me. And I couldn't leave the life, the daughter I loved. I filled the last pages of my diary on the flight home, trying to sort through the mess in my head. I was terrified, but also hopeful. Maybe I could find a way to integrate these two worlds to bring some of that whole alive person back into my cage. I tucked the diary deep into the side pocket of my travel bag before I got off the plane. The house was quiet when I got home. Too quiet. My daughter was already in bed. My husband was sitting on the couch, not watching TV, just staring at the blank screen. "Hey," I said, trying to sound normal, my heart starting to pound. "Long flight." He didn't turn around. He just said, his voice flat and empty, "Welcome home. How was the trip?" "It was fine. Work stuff, you know." I dropped my keys on the counter, my hands shaking a little. I just wanted to go upstairs, take a shower, and pretend to be the person he expected me to be. "I put your bag in the bedroom," he said, still not looking at me. I nodded, even though he couldn't see me. "Thanks. I'm exhausted. I think I'm just going to head up." I walked into our bedroom. My travel bag was on the floor by the closet, and the side zipper, the one I had carefully, deliberately zipped shut on the plane, was open. My blood went cold. It was like one of my seizures, but I was wide awake for this one. The world tilted, and all the sound rushed out of the room. The zipper. That stupid little metal zipper was smiling at me wide open. I had checked it. I know I had. I zipped it shut on the plane, tucking my whole secret life away. But there it was. Open. I didn't even need to look inside. I knew the diary was gone. My stomach dropped. I felt dizzy sick. For a second, I just stood there, staring at the empty side pocket of my bag, my hand half raised like I could somehow undo it. Then I walked back downstairs. My legs felt like they were moving through wet cement. He was still on the couch, but he had turned to face the stairs. And there it was on the coffee table between us. My diary! Open! He had it laid out like a piece of evidence at a trial. My trial. I know, he said. His voice wasn't angry. It was worse. It was dead. The voice he used when a doctor gave us bad news about my medication. Calm, detached, absorbing a problem. I just stared at him. What was I supposed to say? The air was so thick I could barely breathe. I know about the other guy, he continued as if I hadn't heard him. He gestured at the diary. All of it. The texts I saw at the gas station were just the tip of the iceberg, weren't they? The one-night stand after our daughter was born? The whole week with your colleague, Mark. Hearing him say the name felt like a physical blow. It was a name from my real life, spoken out loud in my cage, and it sounded dirty and wrong coming from his mouth. This wasn't a conversation. This wasn't a heartbroken husband pleading for answers. This was an interrogation. He had his evidence, his neatly organized case file, and he was laying it out for the jury. He didn't want an explanation. He wanted a confession. He wanted me to break down, cry, and tell him he was right, that his snooping was justified, that his version of me as a traitor was the correct one. I couldn't give him that. What do you want me to say? I finally managed to get out. My voice was a whisper. The truth would be a good start, he said, his voice hard as stone. For once. But he didn't want my truth. My truth was messy and complicated. My truth was about years of feeling invisible, of being a chore on a to-do list. My truth was that our marriage had died of suffocation long before Mark ever came into the picture. His truth was simple. I cheated. I was bad. He was the victim. So I did the only thing I could. I denied him his victory. I refused to confess. I'm not talking about this, I said, wrapping my arms around myself. Not like this. Not after you went through my things. It was a last desperate attempt to protect the one tiny corner of my life that had felt like my own. It wasn't even a lie to him anymore. It was a refusal. A final act of rebellion. Of course, he didn't see it that way. He saw a liar cornered and still lying. His face, which had been a cold mask, finally cracked. Not with sadness, but with a kind of disgusted certainty. Right, he said, nodding slowly. Of course. You're not going to talk about it. He picked up his phone from the coffee table. We stood there in a silence that felt louder than screaming. He had already called someone. I knew it. He had a plan. He always has a plan. I was just the problem he needed to solve. The doorbell rang. The sound made me jump. He didn't move, just looked at me. He was waiting for me to see the final piece of his plan fall into place. I walked to the door like a zombie and opened. It was my father. My heart shattered into a million pieces. My own dad. He looked exhausted. He looked past me, his eyes landing on my husband, standing in the living room. He walked right by me as if I wasn't even there, and went straight to him. He put his arms around my husband and gave him a hug, a solid, supportive hug. A hug that said, times, I'm on your side. We'll get through this. Asterisk. Then he turned and looked at me. There was no anger in his eyes, just a deep, profound disappointment that I knew so well. It was the same look I got when I had a seizure at a family dinner, or when I had to tell him I couldn't drive my own daughter to his house. It was the look that said times, you are the problem to be managed, asterisk. Your husband called me, he said, his voice heavy. He told me what happened. In that moment, it was all confirmed. To them, I wasn't a person who had made a terrible, complicated mistake. I was a liability. The broken daughter, the cheating wife, the sick woman who couldn't be trusted. My husband and my father, the two men who were supposed to be my protectors, were now united against me, their faces etched with the same weary resignation. Go pack a bag, my dad said. It wasn't a suggestion. You're coming to stay with me for a while. I didn't argue. What was the point? I had been officially exiled. I walked back upstairs, my husband and father watching me go, and packed a few things into a different bag, a smaller one. I felt completely hollow. I could hear them murmuring downstairs, planning my life without me in it. I looked around the bedroom that was no longer mine at the life I had tried so desperately to escape and had now completely destroyed. When I came back down, my husband wouldn't look at me. He was just staring at the wall, his jaw tight. My dad took my bag from my hand. I walked out the front door of my own house, the house where I'd brought my baby home, and didn't look back. I'm at my dad's house now in my childhood bedroom. It's been 3 days. I haven't heard from my husband. My dad brings me meals and makes sure I take my meds. It's a new cage, but an old familiar one. I know what you're thinking. That I got what I deserve. Maybe I did. I hurt a good man, a man who tried his best to take care of me. I know that. I see his pained face in my mind every time I close my eyes. But I can't bring myself to regret the feeling of being seen. I can't regret the few weeks where I felt like a whole person instead of a collection of symptoms. The affair was a symptom, not the disease. The disease was the quiet, gray life where I had no identity beyond patient. I tried to build another life, a real one, in secret. And when my two worlds crashed into each other, they both burned to the ground. I lost my husband, my home, and I don't know when I'll see my daughter again. I've been officially cast as the villain in my own story. And the worst part is, I don't know if I'll ever be able to convince anyone, even myself, that I was just trying to be the hero.
Story teen.
I am the wife who cheated. I know what you're probably thinking, and you're not wrong. I broke our vows. I broke his heart. I'm the villain in the story he tells everyone, and honestly, I get it. But you've only heard his side. You've only seen the black and white picture he painted, where he's the perfect, unsuspecting victim, and I'm the monster who blew up our lives for no reason. It's a much easier story to tell than the truth. The truth is, our marriage died a long time before I ever even had lunch with another man. It died quietly in a house that was always clean, with bills that were always paid on time. We met when we were 16. It was the kind of story people love to hear. High school sweethearts. We grew up together, went to the same state college, got married at 25. We were that couple. The one everyone pointed to as proof that true love was real. On the outside, we were a perfect museum piece, a beautiful exhibit of a relationship that had lasted over a decade. Everyone admired it, but they only saw it from behind the glass. Inside, it was suffocating. We weren't a team anymore. We were just two people who had known each other for a long time. The conversations became routines. How was your day? Fine. What do you want for dinner? I don't care. He stopped looking at me like he saw times me asterisk. He just saw the wife, the other half of the perfect picture. I wasn't a person with changing thoughts and fears and dreams. I was a permanent fixture in his life, and he stopped tending to it. Then, about 2 years ago, my life imploded. My mom was diagnosed with early onset Alzheimer's. It was devastating. My family was a mess, and I was trying to hold everyone together while falling apart myself. I needed my husband. I needed a partner to lean on, to cry with, to tell me it would be okay even if we both knew it wouldn't. He was there physically. He would put his arm around me at family dinners and say all the right supportive husband things. But when we got home, he was a ghost. I'd be crying in the kitchen, and he'd walk in, see me, and just start making a sandwich as if nothing was wrong. He'd ask if I remembered to take out the recycling. He was a curator, not a husband. His only job was to make sure the exhibit looked perfect, polishing the glass while I was screaming on the inside. I felt so completely alone. I was drowning, and the person who was supposed to be my lifeguard was standing on the shore, calmly describing the water. That's when I met Alex at work. It wasn't some dramatic movie-like encounter. He was just a guy on my team. We started getting lunch. For the first time, I told someone what was happening with my mom, and they actually listened. He didn't offer empty solutions or change the subject. He just listened. He asked questions. He remembered details I told him weeks later. He saw me. Not the 16-year-old girl my husband was still married to in his head, but the tired, scared, 8-year-old woman I had become. It felt like oxygen. The affair wasn't a plan. It was a slow slide into something I couldn't stop because it was the only thing that made me feel real. It started with talks, then texts, then drinks after work. And one day he kissed me and I didn't pull away. because for the first time in years I felt like someone had actually chosen me right here, right now. I know what everyone fixates on. That it happened in our house, in our bed. They see it as the ultimate act of disrespect, a desecration. But that house hadn't felt like a home for so long. It was a stage where we performed our roles as the perfect couple. Bringing him there wasn't about hurting my husband. It was a desperate attempt to feel something, to feel alive in a space where I had started to feel like a ghost. I told myself I could keep it separate, that this was a temporary lifeline I could hold on to until I learned how to breathe on my own again, and then I would let go and fix my real life. I know how stupid that sounds now. For a year, I lived two lives. The numb, quiet one at home, and the one with Alex, where I felt seen and heard. I was clinging to that connection with everything I had. Then one evening in September, it all came crashing down. He'd been quiet all day, a different kind of quiet. A cold, heavy silence. I was in the kitchen and he walked in and just stood there holding my phone. My heart dropped into my stomach. He didn't find it by accident. He had gone looking for it. He'd waited until I was in the shower, guessed my passcode, and read everything. He broke my trust to prove I had broken his. The confrontation wasn't a tearful, heartbroken mess. It was cold, calculated. His first words weren't, "How could you?" or "Why?" His first demand was, "You will cut off all contact with him." Now, it wasn't a plea from a man in pain. It was an order. He wanted to sever my only emotional lifeline and lock me back inside the glass case. I promised I would. I deleted Alex's number in front of him. I blocked him on everything I could think of. I promised it was over. And in that moment, I meant it. But the days that followed were worse than before. The ghost in my house was now a warden. He watched my every move. He'd casually ask to use my phone to look something up. He'd ask who I was texting. The silence was heavier, filled with suspicion. I felt like I was being suffocated all over again, but this time the walls were closing in. I was falling apart. He had taken away my only friend, the only person I felt I could talk to, and left me alone with my jailer. I just needed to know Alex was okay. I needed to explain. I told myself it wasn't about the affair anymore. It was about not being completely isolated. So I found him on Instagram. The messages were stupid, harmless. "Hey, are you okay? This is all a mess. I'm sorry." Nothing romantic, just connection. Just a whisper to the only person who I felt understood me. It's been about a month since he found out. We've been living like tense roommates, sleeping with a wall of pillows between us. Tonight we were watching TV. I got up to get a glass of water, leaving my phone on the coffee table. It was a stupid, careless mistake. When I came back into the living room, he was holding it. His back was to me, but I could see the rigid set of his shoulders. He was scrolling slowly. Then he stopped. He tilted his head, and I knew what he was looking at. He was reading my messages with Alex. I froze in the doorway, my heart pounding against my ribs. I couldn't breathe. He slowly turned around the screen of my phone, lighting up his face. He didn't look sad. He didn't even look angry. He just looked cold victorious. He looked up at me, and his lips curled into a tiny, terrible smile. "I wasn't doing anything," I stammered the words, feeling thin and stupid in the silence of the room. "We were just talking." He didn't respond. He just slowly lowered the phone and held it out to me. The screen was still lit up with my open conversation. "It's funny," he said, his voice terrifyingly calm. "For a month I've been wondering if I was crazy. Wondering if I was the bad guy for checking your phone for not trusting you. Thank you for clearing that up for me." That little smile was still on his face. It wasn't a happy smile. It was the smile of someone who just won a game. He hadn't caught his cheating wife. He had caught an escapee. This was his proof, his victory. He finally had the moral high ground, clean and simple. "It wasn't like that," I pleaded, my voice cracking. "He was my friend. You made me cut off my only friend, and I was so alone. I just wanted to see if he was okay." "Your friend," he let out a short, sharp laugh that had no humor in it. "The one you were screwing in our bed, that friend?" Every word was a perfectly aimed dart. He wasn't heartbroken. He was prosecuting me. He didn't want to understand why I was drowning. He just wanted to make sure I knew it was all my fault. I looked at the man I had spent my entire adult life with, and I didn't see a husband. I saw a stranger who had been waiting for me to fail. The ultimatum came next, just as I knew it would. But it wasn't about us anymore. "I'm done," he said, turning his back on me and walking towards the bedroom. "This is over. I'm calling a lawyer tomorrow." That was it. No yelling, no crying. Just a cold, clean execution. He wasn't trying to save us. He was cashing in his chips. The perfect victim narrative was now complete. He had given me a second chance, and I had thrown it away. Case closed. The days that followed were a blur of logistics. He moved into the guest room. We spoke only through clipped formal sentences about mail and bills. He filed for divorce exactly when he said he would. Our first meeting was with a mediator, a neutral woman in a gray pantsuit, who sat between us at a long polished table. The whole thing felt surreal. We were divvying up a life. Who gets the couch? Who gets the wedding china? We were dismantling the museum exhibit piece by piece. He was a different person in those meetings. Composed, reasonable, efficient. He never looked at me. He spoke to the mediator as if I wasn't even there. "We have agreed to sell the house and split the equity," he'd say, his voice flat. He was so good at playing the part. The wronged but dignified husband doing the right thing. Meanwhile, my world was burning down around me. The news traveled fast. His family, who had treated me like a daughter for over a decade, cut me off completely. Friends we'd had since college stopped returning my calls. They had heard his version, the simple, easy-to-digest story. She had a year-long affair. He found out he tried to forgive her, and she went right back to the other man. I was the monster. He was the saint. No one wanted to hear about the years of silence, about the emotional neglect, about the soul-crushing loneliness. No one wanted to hear that I was crying for help and the affair was the only way I knew how to scream. It's so much easier to have a clear hero and a clear villain. I made it easy for them to choose. Alex and I don't talk anymore. Once the divorce was filed, the reality of it all crashed down. What we had was a lifeline in a storm, not a foundation for a future. It was a symptom of my broken marriage, not a cure for it. He was a good person who got caught in my disaster, and it ended just like everything else. I'm completely on my own now. We sold the house last month. Walking through those empty rooms for the last time was strange. It didn't feel like I was losing a home. It felt like I was leaving a prison I had helped build. This was the stage where I had performed wifehood, where I had felt invisible, and where I had finally betrayed everything to feel alive. So here I am, 28 years old, living in a small apartment across town, trying to figure out who I am when I'm not one half of a couple. For the first time since I was 16, my identity isn't tied to his. It's terrifying. Most days I'm just sad. I mourn the boy I fell in love with and the man he never became for me. I mourn the future we were supposed to have. I carry the shame of what I did every single day. But some days in the quiet of my new apartment, I feel something else. It's a tiny spark of not happiness, but possibility. I can eat cereal for dinner and no one cares. I can watch whatever I want on TV. I can be messy. I can be selfish. I can just be times me times without worrying about how the exhibit looks from the outside. I know I broke our vows. I know I caused him a pain he never deserved, and I will live with that forever. I'm the villain of his story, and I have to accept that. But I'm not a monster. I was just a woman who was so desperate to be seen that I set my own life on fire just to feel the warmth.
Story 11.
I know what he told you. He told you I cheated. He painted a picture of a wife who got a new job, a new life, and decided her quiet, loving husband wasn't good enough anymore. He showed you the texts. He has proof, right? Words on a screen stripped of all the silence and sadness they were born from. But my story doesn't begin with a coworker named G. It begins 8 years ago with a phone call that broke something in me I never managed to fix. We were long distance then, young and stupid and planning a whole future. I was completely in love with him. One night he called. I remember his voice was shaky. He told me he'd slept with someone. It was just once he was drunk, it meant nothing. All the usual excuses. The world just collapsed into the tiny speaker of my phone. I could barely breathe. But I loved him. So we worked through it. That was his phrase. What it really meant was that I cried for a week and then I swallowed the hurt and decided to pretend I was okay so I wouldn't lose him. The crack was there from the start. We just put a cheap rug over it and tried not to trip. We got married, bought a house. From the outside, it was perfect. He calls us shut-ins, and he says it like it's a cute, cozy thing. For him, it probably was. His entire world was in his gaming headset. He had his friends, his missions, his victories. He was a hero in that world. My world was the four walls of our living room. My companion was the Netflix menu scrolling through the same shows over and over. The silence was the worst part. Our house was so quiet. I'd try to talk to him, to tell him about my day or something funny I saw. I'd start a story and he'd just say, his eyes glued to the screen, fingers clicking away. I wasn't a partner. I was an interruption. An NPC in his real-life game. I got so tired of starting sentences I knew I'd never get to finish. So eventually, I just stopped trying. We'd sit in the same room for hours and not say a word. He was happy in his world, and I was just there. Invisible. Getting that promotion wasn't about the money. It was a lifeline. Suddenly, I was leaving the silent house and going to an office full of people. People who talked and laughed. People who would ask, "How was your weekend?" and then actually listen to the answer. It was like I had been holding my breath for 8 years and could finally exhale. I remembered what it felt like to be a person, not just a piece of furniture in someone else's life. That's when the drinks after work started. It was a group thing at first. A bunch of us from the new team going out to celebrate. It felt so good to just sit and talk, to feel like I was part of something. And that's where I got to know G. My husband will tell you he was my affair partner. The truth is, he was just an audience. He was the first person in years who looked at me when I spoke, who didn't have one eye on a screen. He'd ask a question and then wait for the whole answer. It was that simple. I knew my husband wouldn't understand. The man who cheated on me 2 months into our relationship had the nerve to be incredibly jealous. If I told him I was meeting a male coworker for a drink, he would have torn the house apart with accusations. It would have been a huge, ugly fight. So I took the easy way out. I told him G was gay. It was a stupid lie. A cowardly lie. But I was just so desperate to have this one small piece of my life that was safe, that didn't come with suspicion and anger. I wanted one friend without having to defend it. Our text conversations became my diary. He was the only person I could tell how I really felt. My husband found those texts, and he's using them as his evidence. He saw that I was looking at apartments, and I was. Not because I was planning to move in with G, but in the same way you look at beach houses you can't afford. It was a fantasy, an escape. I'd sit on the couch listening to my husband yelling at his friends online, and I'd send G a link to a tiny one-bedroom apartment downtown and say, "Imagine, it was a game we played dreaming of a life where I wasn't so suffocatingly lonely." He saw the text where I said I just want to be impulsive for once. He thinks that meant I wanted to sleep with someone. It meant I wanted to feel something, anything other than the flat gray numbness of my life. It was a scream. I wanted to just get in my car and drive, or book a flight somewhere, or do anything that wasn't on our rigid, silent schedule. And the worst one I called, "Our marriage a failure." That was the text that he probably thinks proves everything. It was late one night. My husband had been gaming for 6 hours straight without saying a single word to me. I felt so utterly alone sitting in my own home next to the man I married. I texted G. This whole thing is just an unfortunate failure. It was raw and ugly and true. It was a moment of pure despair, whispered to the only person I knew wouldn't judge me. I couldn't say it to my husband. To him, it would have been an attack. To G, it was just a confession. I knew it was a dangerous game. I kept our chat on mute. I would delete messages sometimes, not because I was hiding an affair, but because I was terrified. I was terrified he'd find my one safe space, this one little outlet for all my sadness, and destroy it. He found it, he wouldn't see a cry for help. He'd only see betrayal. And then I would be completely and totally alone again. Last night, I got home from drinks with G and a few others. The house was dark, which was weird. My husband's car was in the driveway. I walked in and called his name. No answer. The only light was the glow from his computer monitor in the office. I walked over, expecting to see him with his headset on, lost in his game like always. But the chair was empty. His headset, which is Times, Always Times, on the desk, was gone. His keyboard was dark. A cold feeling washed over me. Something felt wrong. I pulled out my phone to text him, my hands starting to shake. "Hey, where are you? Everything okay?" The message showed as delivered. I waited, staring at the screen, my heart pounding in the suffocating quiet of the house. A moment later, my phone buzzed in my hand. It was him. My relief was so sharp it hurt. I answered a breathless hello coming out. "Don't bother coming to look for me," he said. His voice was flat, colder than I'd ever heard it. It wasn't angry. It was empty. "What are you talking about? Where are you? I came home and..." He cut me off. "I'm at my mom's. I packed my things." I sank down onto the arm of the couch, my legs suddenly weak. "You packed? Why? What is happening?" Then he started reading. He read my own words back to me, but his voice twisted them into something ugly and cheap. "It would be nice to just be impulsive for once." "What did you have in mind?" he asked, his voice dripping with sarcasm. "What impulsive thing were you and G planning?" My blood ran cold. "How did you?" "You went through my phone." "Don't change the subject," he snapped. "What about the apartments? You've been looking at apartments behind my back. Planning your new life." He read out the address of the one I'd sent to G just a few days ago. The little one-bedroom I'd been fantasizing about. "That was a joke," I whispered, my voice barely working. "It was a fantasy, like looking at beach houses. You know we can't afford." "And this one's my favorite," he said, ignoring me completely. "This whole thing is just an unfortunate failure. Our marriage. Our 8 years. A failure." I started sobbing then. Huge, ugly, gulping sobs. It felt like he'd reached into my chest and pulled out my heart just to show me how black it was. "You don't understand," I cried. You're taking it all out of context. I was just sad. I was lonely. I was talking to a friend. A friend you lied about, he shot back. A friend you told me was gay so you could go out drinking with him whenever you wanted. I called your office, by the way. Asked for G. A woman answered. His wife. The whole world tilted. The stupid protective lie I had told had just become the nail in my coffin. I lied because I knew you'd be like this, because I knew you wouldn't let me have a friend. I have to go, he said, his voice void of any emotion. My mom helped me pack. She thinks you're disgusting. Hearing that felt like a physical slap. He had gone to his mother, shown her my private thoughts, and let her pass judgment on me before I even knew I was on trial. He didn't come to me. He didn't scream at me. He just quietly dismantled our life, enlisted his mother's help, and left. He tried and convicted me in a secret court, and this phone call was just the sentencing. Please, I begged the word, tearing out of my throat. Please just come home. We can talk about this. I know how it looks, but I swear nothing happened. I was just venting. I felt like you hated me sometimes. I just wanted to feel needed. It was the truest thing I'd said in our entire marriage, laid bare and pathetic over the phone. There was a long pause. For a crazy second, I thought it might have worked. I thought I might have broken through the ice. I don't hate you, he said, and his voice was so tired. I just don't want to be married to you anymore. I'll have the divorce papers sent over. Divorce? The word was absurd. No? Let's go to counseling. We can finally talk about everything. About what happened at the beginning. We never really fixed that, did we? We just put a rug over it. I was desperate, throwing anything at the wall, hoping something would stick. There's nothing to fix, he said. You made that clear. It's a failure. And then he hung up. I sat there in the dark, silent house, the dial tone buzzing in my ear. I didn't move for an hour. I just stared at the empty space where his gaming chair used to be. The silence I had hated for so long was now absolute. He wasn't just in another world anymore. He was gone. The next few days were a blur. I walked through the house like a ghost, noticing all the little things he'd taken. His toothbrush holder was gone. The weird sci-fi poster he loved was off the wall in the office. His ugly recliner was missing from the living room. He'd managed to take everything that was his without leaving a trace, erasing himself from our home. He gets to be the good guy in this story. He gets to tell everyone that his wife got a promotion and immediately started planning to leave him for a coworker. He has the proof. He has the texts. He is the victim, the poor husband who was blindsided and betrayed. He found my cry for help and decided to use it as his get-out-of-jail-free card. He never had to face the quiet misery we were living in. He never had to answer for the years of neglect, for the way he made me feel completely and utterly invisible. He never had to own up to the fact that he broke us right at the very start. and never bothered to learn how to fix it. He just covered the crack with a rug and got angry when I finally tripped. I'm not innocent. I lied. I hid my friendship and my feelings because I was a coward. I built a little wall around my heart and only let one person see inside. I see that now. But my crime wasn't cheating. My crime was being unhappy and daring to tell someone about it. He thinks our marriage ended with that phone call. He thinks it ended when he read my texts. But he's wrong. Our marriage didn't end last night. It ended 8 years ago with a different phone call when he confessed to cheating on me. Everything since then has just been an echo. I've been living in the ghost of a marriage for years, and I guess I should be grateful he finally decided to turn the lights out. But right now, all I can feel is the cold.